we'll start with roll call.
Okay, we have Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Here.
Director Wilson.
Here.
Director Wilkins is going to be a few minutes late, and President Tresson.
Here. Great. And at this point, we'll go to the flag. Begin the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This time, I will open the floor to public comment. If anybody has anything they'd like to address the board with that's not an item on the agenda, now would be the time to do it. I see a number of folks in the audience, but anybody here have something they want to chat about outside of the agenda? If not, Rochelle, did we get any written public comment to share?
No, sir.
No? Okay, so we will close public comment at this time. Move to item 3, which is Professional Achievements Awards, Anniversaries, and Acknowledgements.
Good morning, President Teresa and directors. Vicki Lufron, Human Resources Administrator. And as I do on a monthly basis, I would like to acknowledge a couple of staff. First up would be Kevin Dem. Kevin is our new purchasing agent too. He began in February, and many of you have already met him. And Kevin would like to just say a couple of things for us.
Good morning, all. Thank you, Vicki. Just want to say very happy to be here at the agency. Really appreciate the opportunity. Everybody's been super nice and welcoming, easing me in. Like Vicki said, only been here about 6 weeks or so still got some training wheels on, learning the ropes. But like I said, everybody's been terrific from every department about giving me tidbits of information about how the whole agency works. Still trying to soak it in. The purchasing agent job has been going great. Michelle's been terrific, and Kaylee about training me. Everybody else, like I said, has just been terrific on the admin side. So very happy to be here. A little bit about my background. I live here in Truckee. My wife works at the school district. Raised 2 kids through the Truckee school system, and been here for quite a while, and expect to be here for quite a while here in Truckee.
Great. On behalf of the board, welcome, Kevin. Certainly appreciate your positive energy as we walk in, so good to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, all.
And then we also wanted to introduce one additional person, which Richard's going to do, and then an acknowledgement, which Richard will also do. Yes.
So we also have via Zoom Liz Cook, who is our consultant that's helping out as we recruit for a new finance and admin manager. So I wanted to get an opportunity to introduce her to the board. She has met the finance committee. So with that said, Liz, I'll give you an opportunity to say hi and maybe tell a little bit about yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm happy to meet with you this morning virtually. The weather was a little rough for me, so I wasn't able to make it over the pass to come visit for today. But I'll be back in the office in March, so hopefully I'll get to meet the rest of you in person then. As Richard noted, my name is Liz Cook. I'm a finance consultant with Boucher Law. A finance consultant with an employment law firm? How does that work? Well, I used to work with the folks that run the law firm at the Contra Costa Water District, where I worked for about 10 years. I started as an analyst, and then when I left, I was the acting assistant general manager for administration and HR, including finance. Prior to those 10 years at the Water District, I also worked in the private sector. I worked for Dreyer's Grand Ice Cream. Some of you may know it as Edie's in some areas that you may have lived or visited. And I went through the accounting ranks there. So I bring a full portfolio of craziness on the private side, the respect of the ratepayer on the public side, and mix it all together to try to help support your finance team while the employment law firm that I work for finds talent for you for this open position.
Thank you, Liz. appreciate you supporting the agency. It was nice meeting you at the Finance Committee meeting.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Liz. And then the other acknowledgement is for Mark Messerschmidt. Unfortunately, he is out ill today, but I wanted to acknowledge him on the 13th of this month. His awareness to an unusual amount of black smoke coming out of the boiler smokestack, which then resulted in a further investigation. We found that a dampener had broke on that boiler, so it was pumping basically unburned raw diesel fuel into the boiler. His quick action most likely saved us from having an explosion, which could have severely damaged the boiler or injured staff. So just wanted to acknowledge Mark for his quick action, his awareness, and getting the right people to respond to the situation.
Thanks, Richard. Please make the notes reflect that the board appreciates his efforts there. And anything else, Vicki?
No, thanks.
Okay.
And thank you to Kevin and Liz and Mark. Congratulations.
Move on to the consent agenda. Approval of minutes, ratifying the payment of the general fund warrants, and the approval of financial statements. Is there any of those items that the board members would like to pull off the consent agenda? No? I will entertain a motion for approval of the consent items.
Move to approve.
We have we'll take a motion by Director Smelzer and a second by you, Dale.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Any discussion, public comments on those items? Hearing none. All in favor of approval of the consent agenda items?
We have to do a roll call because of
yeah.
Dale.
Oh, right. Sorry. Thank you, Vicki. So roll call.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and Director Chesson.
Yes.
All in favor? Motion approved.
So as we mentioned, Dan, Director Wilkins, is running a few minutes late. I think he was interested in him and being involved in the regular agenda items. I don't know whether staff wanted to reorganize those, or do we want to just take a brief recess and wait for Director Wilkins to show up? Do we think he was going to be here?
Yeah, we can jump to item 5.
Sure,
Dan
that's a
probably
good
be
one.
about 10 minutes late. We're right in that.
Yeah, we
window.
can nominate Dan. We'll move to item 5 of the regular agenda, which is the Placer County Local Area Formation Commission's notice of upcoming vacancies and call for nominations. And so at this point, is there any of the board members have interest in possibly being nominated for a seat at LAFCO?
I'd like to nominate Dan Wilkins.
I think Dan's got a pretty full plate. I think that motion is going to fail for lack of a second. Scott, you've got your hands full.
Relatively. I mean, there's an alternate position that I would potentially be interested in, but
We're happy to nominate you if you'd like to be nominated.
sure.
Okay. So Director Wilson is interested in being nominated. I gotta scroll forward in this packet to make sure what exact action LAFCO is looking for from our board with regards to filling that spot.
Run through forms of some kind.
Yeah, it looks like there's a form to fill out and then have you sign it as the board president.
So the alternate voting member
I can print the documentation for you to sign, and then I can fax it over to them today or email it to them today. And just noting that we made the action today at our meeting. And then once the minutes are finalized, we'll give them to them next month if need be. But we just recognize that the board made the action and that you recognize him.
Do they want motion action that the board has formally
It doesn't have to
nominated
be.
somebody to be up for
It
nomination?
doesn't have to be the formal action
Okay.
of proof of minutes.
Okay.
Just if
Okay.
need be. But your signature will suffice, and I can
Okay.
print that after the meeting.
All right, so the direction is to, have Director Wilson proceed with putting his name in the hat for that. That's great.
Director Tresson, sorry to interrupt. It's Andrew Ramos on the Zoom. I'm looking at the letter from LAFCO, and at least my read on it is that it does suggest that it needs to be a board nomination. So sorry to do the
No problem.
roll
Easy.
call, but I would suggest that we go ahead and do the full board nomination.
Okay, so I see
Yes.
Director Smelser is moving to nominate
Director Wilson.
Director Wilson to put him on the as a potential voting member of LAFCO, alternate voting member. Dale, second.
Yes, I second.
Okay, great. We have a motion and a second. And any additional comment from the public? You guys know what LAFCO is?
I do.
We can stall for time here for a second. It's a good educational opportunity. LAFCO is the Local Area Formation Commission. Every county has a LAFCO. It's kind of a funny name. Basically, they're the ones who define the service area boundaries for every municipality and public agency. And so it's supposed to facilitate good governance. It also prevents urban sprawl so that cities can't just annex agricultural lands and develop over those areas. They would be an agency that would oversee any kind of consolidation of two different agencies that have similar, they analyze agencies that have similar functions and serve a similar geographic area. You go through LAFCO to get a consolidation. And so it's an important public agency. And so it's great that hopefully we'll have some representation up here on that board. So at this point, hey Dan, we have a motion and a second to put Director Wilson's name up for the alternate voting member. And had some public discussion. Any other questions? No? Roll call.
Okay. We have Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
Director Wilson.
Do I?
Yes, you can.
Okay, yes.
Maybe we abstain
I
because
abstain, yeah.
he's part of the actual nominee. No?
No, I think he can say yes. I mean, it would be silly for you not to
And
vote.
accept it. Okay. And Director Tresson.
Yes?
And we should,
Yeah, let the minutes reflect that Director Wilkins arrived at approximately 9:13.
13. Okay, and Director Wilkins.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
By roll call. Motion approved.
Okay, so
Congratulations.
Dan, just to get you on the page, we've gone through items 1 through 4, and then the regular agenda item number 5. Right. So now we're going to go back to the regular agenda item number 1, the presentation discussion on the proposed nutrient removal alternatives study.
So Jason's going to give the presentation. This presentation is what I alluded to in the memo that I sent all the board of directors. No further ado, I'll let Jason give his presentation, and we'll open it up to questions and comments.
Perfect. President Tresson, Board of Directors, appreciate the time. I wanted to acknowledge we have Tim Loper from Corollo in attendance. I believe you were designated as principal in charge on the proposal, so he may be able to answer some questions for us if I get stuck. Hopefully that won't happen too much. So this is kind of a near and dear topic to my heart. We're hitting a point at the agency where there's a lot of confluence of different factors. We've got COVID, we've established a master plan, we've got new financial constraints associated with the pandemic, we've got a lot of things that are kind of on our plate that didn't used to be, and we've kind of identified that we could potentially be at a really important inflection point, and we want to explore that. So that's kind of what this is about. So obviously some of the background.
Share the screen with Dale. Okay.
Thank you. So some of the background, you're familiar. We, as the agency, the board approved the sewer master plan provided by Corollo in 2022. Most of that work was done during 2021 and a little earlier. So we've been operating under the assumptions from that master plan. We've been using that master plan as a really important planning document. So it identified tons and tons of infrastructure needs that in the past we maybe hadn't been quite as aware of, and they're on our radar now, and they weren't in the past. So it's been a very, very powerful tool for that. The estimated cost at the time was around $144 million in 2021 dollars. That's going to be an important concept over the next 25 years. So our current CIP list that we're working on right now in engineering and maintenance is derived partially from the master plan and partially from previously and co-identified projects. Okay, so a little bit about why we're even having this conversation. So we've started really ramping up on a lot of the projects, and we are working currently on lime conveyance improvements for the phosphorus removal portion of the plant. And as we've been going through the last couple of years, projects, they've ended up being a little more expensive than we anticipated. I think that that's kind of been a universal truth for a lot of public agencies, a lot of private agencies. There was an article in the Reno Gazette Journal this last week talking about the costs associated with their new police facility and how it skyrocketed, and there's a lot of finger pointing and a lot of trying to explain why that is, but ultimately a really large portion of that is cost of labor, cost of materials, availability of resources. So we've been running into that consistently. We have had several projects that have come in over above our estimates, and some of them have been kind of surprising, and some of them to the point where the idea for the project kind of got tabled as a result of it being so much more expensive than we anticipated. So, like I said, we're working on this lime conveyance, and someone in the room, someone smart in the room said, we start this, we're in. So what are we in for if we do this? What projects do we have in the master plan identified that are associated with starting this project? And we found about $8.3 million worth of projects in the next 8 to 10 years that are going to be directly related to this, that once we dive into this pool we're in, we're committed to lime conveyance.
Excuse me, is that the previous estimate or is it a new estimate?
This is based on the estimates that came out of the master plan.
Okay.
Yeah. So that being said, another smart person in the room said, how committed are we to chemical lime treatment for phosphorus? Is this really the best technology? And it was anecdotal at the time, but the more we thought about it, the more we thought this is a good question. This is a really good question because in the 1970s, this was amazing technology. Very few agencies were even addressing phosphorus. Most agencies were still focusing on BOD. And we were kind of cutting edge, and this was the best solution and really amazing at the time. Since then, a lot of agencies have taken up the mantle of nitrogen and phosphorus removal nutrients, I'll use them in that, and they've got a lot of really, really clever ways of doing it these days that they didn't have in the 1970s. So we're basically asking the question at this point, is there an alternative that might be a better way for us to go? Is it cost prohibitive? Is it technologically prohibitive? We don't know the answers to that. So, next slide. So on the existing master plan, we have a high-level document. I don't believe the intent of the document was ever to be granular and to define projects to a design level ahead of time. It was we went from not knowing much to knowing a lot. So the master plan was very, very useful, but it did have a limited scope, and it was designed to just create the path forward to give us an idea of where we needed to head, what kind of condition we were in at the time. The cost estimates were based on the best available knowledge at the time, and at the time being a key phrase. A lot of that information has changed. So we took a crack at it internally, looking at some of the projects, just basically building off the master plan we were provided, and we came up with somewhere in the ballpark of $270 million in 2023 dollars. So comparing to the 144, it was a little more. Obviously, we can't completely bank on that, but we're pretty confident it's significantly more than we were anticipating. So again, this kind of added to a little bit of our concern, a little bit of the conversation. It's, well, now we're not necessarily comparing apples to apples because new technologies being compared to that 144 maybe wasn't accurate, and we maybe need to have a better assessment of what the plan moving forward actually will cost us. All right, so staff considerations, things we've been thinking about. Obviously, do the technologies that have been developed and since maybe the mid to late 1990s, do they represent a better solution for us? Purely from a non-economic perspective, do they provide a better solution for us? Do our facilities that we are looking to rehab currently require more than this superficial work we're assuming? Of course, when you do a rehab of anything, you tear the wallpaper off and you might find that the wall is actually damaged, and then you take the wall down and you find out that the electrical is braided wire, and then so it kind of escalates from there. So we don't know the answer to that completely. We're not completely confident saying the whole place is crumbling. We're not confident saying that the whole place just needs a coat of paint. We're kind of in that middle ground. We're not 100% confident at this point. That being said, do the improved costs associated with cheaper life cycle over the entire life of a facility, do those pencil out when compared to rehabbing our facility? When you're looking at a 40 or a 50-year expected life cycle for a facility, there's untold numbers of rehab done in that period of time that we can't really account for. We don't know. We may have to replace a set of stairs that we weren't planning on. It's just little incidental things, but it adds up, and we don't have that information. We don't have that assessment at this point. So we're looking to get that. And of course, some of us that came from other facilities, one of the things you do note about TTSA's facility is that it's very compartmentalized. There's a lot of different things happening, and it's cool, and it's all integrated. It's an amazing facility from that perspective. But given some of the constraints associated with staffing, with future technologies, does it make sense to have a more holistic approach to this, where we're saying we're able to address everything in one sharp point, rather than this facility getting addressed, this facility getting addressed, and kind of doing it piecemeal? Another consideration we have is, do we want to be industry leaders? I know that's something that it's kind of pablum. It gets thrown around a little bit, leading the industry. There's a lot of value in that, in my opinion. We're in kind of a special position. We're in a very environmentally sensitive area. We're in an area where people are hyper aware of that fact. They're very proud of the area they live in. They're very proud of the Truckee. They're very proud of Lake Tahoe. And I think that we're in a position where we should be really, really proud of the technology that we're using and the facility that we run. And it should be a reflection of what the community standards effectively. Do we want this to be a facility that people come from Switzerland to visit? Is it amazing? Maybe not. Maybe it's not a consideration, but it's a question we should ask. All right, so we'll get a little bit into the intent of the study. So like I said, there's a lot of technologies out there. Different facilities use different technologies because of their independent constraints. So are there technologies out there that exist that are better, and how do we compare them, and how do we assess whether they're best for us? That's kind of a big question. Every facility has different requirements, different WDR and PDS limits, different weather, different, there's temperature considerations. There's a lot of different factors. So we want to be able to compare all of those things in a way that gives us a definitive. We're pretty confident this is what's best. And then, of course, right, we have to really consider the financial impact of what a change in our technologies would look like. Would it create a short-term increase in costs that results in a long-term savings, or vice versa, or it's something we just really need to assess. So we want to investigate that, and of course, any consideration we have with the best alternatives would have to include that conversation. We can't do this in a bubble. We don't have the right to throw money around flagrantly, so we have to consider that. And then, of course, we want to select the best option for the agency. We'll get into it a little bit later, but just be aware one of the options is effectively continue with the course we've already established, so that is not off the table. So, and we want to have kind of a good involvement from all stakeholders, board, agency management, agency staff, community. We want to have input from all of those things that give us a good definitive way of saying this is the best for us, with all stakeholders considered. And then out of this study, we want to get a 10% design for whatever the chosen alternative or continuance of the current plan is. So that's kind of the intent. That's what we want to get out of this.
So 10% of the $270 million?
No, 10% of a design.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll just go over the project scope as it's presented in the study real quick. So Carollo is proposing to manage the project, which it would involve effectively setting up meetings, getting everyone involved participating, helping us develop our criteria, communicating with the board of directors when the time comes, all those things, basic project management tasks. They've got it spelled out pretty well in the proposal. We need to gather the baseline information and develop the evaluation criteria. This is the really important part because we don't know what we're going to come up with unless we know how we're going to establish a rating system effectively. So what weight do we want to give cost? What weight do we want to give automation? What weight do we want to give technological advancements? We have to make all those decisions. And again, I'll reiterate throughout the presentation, this is completely driven by DTSA. This is every one of these decision trees involves input from every level of the agency. So if we're going down a road that someone is not 100% comfortable with, we sit on it for a while, we make a decision that everyone can get behind before we move forward. So it's not necessarily a jump off the cliff type of moment. It's more of a climb down a ladder kind of a system. And then we're going to do the evaluate the existing facilities, which is really, really important because this is going to include adding more current data to what was already performed in the master plan to assess capacity, loading. We talked about the EDUs and the nutrients and the hydraulic and all that, and now that conversation is kind of fresh in our heads. We can now revisit all that information, reassess it, and most importantly is to reassess some of those costs so we can get a better picture of what we're signed up for currently. We have an estimate that we've come up with. Boy, sure would not be nice to have some confirmation from them to know a little bit more confidently where that number lies. Again, we've just participated in rate studies. We want to make sure we're doing the right stuff moving forward, and we want to make sure we can fund what we've signed up for. So then we're going to evaluate the nutrient removal alternatives. That's going to be using those criteria that we established in the initial stages of the study. And we're going to be evaluating them based on constructability, cost, and part of this is also going to involve a power loading assessment. So new technology might run with more power or power in different portions of the facility, so there's a whole aspect to this that we haven't really broached much at this point, and so hopefully this will get addressed as part of this study. And then we will plan on visiting several other facilities that use the technology. The hope would be in this to get targeted facilities that use technologies we like in climates that we're accustomed that are similar to ours, hopefully even with the same kinds of weird structures with the flows going up and down the way they do here because of the tourist seasons. So if we could, visit facilities, talk with the plant managers, talk with their engineering departments, ask them how they've done with it. And of course, I believe Richard has already extended invitation to board members that are interested in participating in any of those tours. So literally all stakeholders. And then the project report is going to include that 10%. And again, I'll just reiterate that does include if we end up moving forward with our current plan, which is to rehab the nutrient removal facilities, do some repair work, make some minor modifications in our process by going to WAS strip and its details and stuff. But so that is definitely still one of the options. Okay, and just really quick, this stuff kind of gets a little bit in the weeds, but I just kind of want to give you a little idea of what those potential alternatives might look like. So you've got something that's called an MBR, membrane bioreactor. It's a very, very small footprint facility. They were kind of coming online in a big way when I was starting my career in the early 2000s. They've really come a long way. Costs have gotten a lot more attractive. Some of the benefits is that the process itself produces filtered water, so there's less need for other aspects of the facility, and it can really set you up well for UV disinfection, which is something we've talked about several times. And then there's something called the Barden-Foe process, which is it's like a multi-step process that uses biological systems to remove nitrogen and carbon and phosphorus in one step, as opposed to multiple facilities. Again, we won't get too detailed on this stuff. I'm just giving you an idea. And then there's kind of an exciting category called the Universe of Ideas. That includes a lot of different things. It kind of really comes down to whether we want to be on the industry leaders, cutting edge, or bleeding edge. But we don't want to ignore the bleeding edge. We still want to see what it looks like out there. We want to know. There's one that's activated granular sludge, which when you've been in the industry is a long time and you read how it works, you kind of think it sounds like magic because it sounds like it promises a lot. It is not highly implemented in the U.S. yet. There's a lot of implementations in Europe. Again, does this fall into the cutting or bleeding edge category? We'll find out. And if we want to be really the first facility on the West Coast that does something, I don't know. We would have to kind of look at that. And then, of course, the option of reevaluating and defining and refining our current plan, which is to clean up the facility, get it patched up, get the systems operating the way they were intended to originally. So I just kind of wanted to provide this for you guys. I know you've probably seen this on the website. This is kind of a process schematic of our facility. These in red are the facilities that would be potentially impacted by this study. So it represents a pretty good portion of our treatment, but it also points out that it doesn't impact some of our facility, and some of our newer facilities, solids handling facility, we would still be using regardless of the outcome of this study. So it doesn't represent a complete overhaul of the entire facility, just those associated with nutrient removal. And then the next slide. I wish we could. Can we make it a little bit bigger, Michelle? Yeah, there. That's good. I don't want to lose the numbers there. So this is a overlay map of our facility. This area represents potentially touched areas. It's a lot of the facility. Geographically, it's a lot of the facility. I would like to point out that a lot of these facilities, we've included the age of those facilities. You have several that are approaching 50 years, a handful that are in the 40 some odds, and a handful that are in the 20 some odds. So a lot of those facilities, the ones we're talking about, we're not 100% sure what the condition ultimately is and what the rehab from scratch ultimately costs. Again, maybe that will get better defined through this study. But I kind of wanted to provide this. It's a very good representation of, it's a lot of the facility. Next slide. So this is kind of, I just wanted to emphasize this. This is the proposed task schedule. All of those in yellow that I've highlighted, those represent opportunities for us to provide input and redirect. So you can see there's a lot of those opportunities. We are not going to get to task 3 without substantial input from agency staff on tasks 1 and 2. So like I said, I just wanted this to kind of be a visual representation of the opportunities that we have to provide input. I mean, this is ultimately our study that they're doing for us. So we want to make sure we're driving it. Okay. Really quick, I don't know if anyone subscribes to Wastewater Digest. It's a pretty exciting magazine. This is pretty exciting though. So we did find this case study. This is from the issue they put out annually, I believe. That's like the coolest projects throughout the year. This is a facility that was built in Logan, Utah, which gets similar seasons to ours. Obviously not as much snow, but similar seasons. It's an 18 million gallon per day facility, so it's substantially larger than ours. It uses the Barden-Foe process that I was describing earlier, and it avoids any kind of chemical treatment for the most part. There are some side chemicals used, but again, chemicals represent a pretty substantial portion of our operating expenses. So, and this is the thing that got us. This was constructed in 2023 at approximately $139 million. So it got some of us kind of thinking, scratching our heads and wondering, if they can get an entirely new greenfield facility for $139 million, maybe we can't do that because of geographical constraints or whatever it ends up being. But I mean, it's there. It's a definite possibility. So we don't want to ignore that possibility. If we're going to spend 144 on the low end to rehab a facility, and they just got a brand new facility that's larger than ours, that produces water that would suffice for our permit, it's worth looking at least.
So to reiterate, this is a brand new facility? Mm-hmm. There wasn't any.
They had, so
change.
Effectively what they had was what they call oxidation ponds. So back in the day, right, they used to just pour primary into ponds and let it sit for a long enough period of time that microorganisms would kind of do their thing on it. Mm-hmm. They got a cease and desist order for nitrogen permeating into the groundwater. They were told they had to do something ASAP. So they obviously had different pressures than us, but this was the most feasible solution for them.
Just as if we did something like that or made a move like that, we would need an additional area of land to lay this out. We wouldn't put it in this facility here, or could we?
Those are questions we don't have answers to yet. That's kind of what we wanted to accomplish through the study.
May be important.
It may be very important.
With the talk about doing away with some of our land, that we find out what the hell we're doing first.
Yeah. Again, as I mentioned, we felt that there was a lot of factors kind of coming to a confluence right now. A lot of things we're discussing, being good neighbors and all that stuff. So yeah, agreed.
Uh-huh.
So obviously we want to find out kind of what kind of benefits we can realize from this. These are just things we've come off the top of our heads. So obviously new infrastructure represents a more defined and more solid life expectancy. We can't really say how long certain facilities here will last. We can play it by ear. We can go 5 years at a click, maybe 10 years at a click in some facilities. We can say, we know it's good for that period of time, but we can't really say this has got 30 years or 40 or 50 years left on it. So new facilities, new treatment processes with new materials give us a much more well-defined life expectancy for the facility. This could be a potential massive portion of the project, but reduced O&M cost. The cost associated with running a facility that's got lots of moving parts, can't be automated, can't be left alone, compared to a facility that is almost fully automated, can receive inputs from new technologies, can basically run in auto, we'll put it that way, compared to some other facilities, it can save substantially over a long period of time on O&M and chemical costs. I mean, you guys know some of our most expensive expenditures here is electricity, chemicals. So any way we can control those costs over the long term is a win. So we would be better positioned. Obviously, you guys are aware we've started the conversation with the regional board to revisit our WDR, and we don't know what that looks like yet. They're hopefully going to provide us some input over the coming months that will allow us to kind of use it as a planning tool. But at this point, we don't completely know. Having newer facilities kind of better prepares us to adapt to whatever WDR or potential NPDES limitations we could be looking at in the future. And then obviously, like, we'd be leveraging technology to create solutions. You know, a lot of times, I think the historical trend has always been to throw more people at problems. There is a potential that we can be throwing technology at that problem instead.
So with the Logan facility, and having not seen the article, do they go into the O&M costs in that article?
No, not
Would it be, I would just find it very interesting to see what they would be for a facility that's 2 times plus the size of ours.
Yeah, I mean, we of course have other plants we communicate with if we were looking for that. I mean, for this, likely their O&M costs went up because they were going from ponds to a fully functioning facility. But yeah, I mean, that information we can definitely glean that information.
Yeah, for me that would be very interesting.
And that would, I'm assuming, at some point become a pretty major conversation point in the study as well. Mm-hmm. Is identifying, because that's, if you want to know how much something's going to cost over a 20-year period of time, so that you can compare those two, then you would have to include O&M. So we've treated water reliably here for 50 years. I think that's something to be very proud of. I'm very proud of that fact. I'm looking to make sure that we're in a position where we're confident we're going to be able to treat wastewater for another 50 years. And I think that's our responsibility as those that are running this facility right now. We want to put those that are coming after us in a position where they're not bandaging, they're not, rehabbing stuff that shouldn't have been rehabbed in the first place. And I want to demonstrate a commitment to the local resources. We already said that. This is super important up here. I think if you poll people in this community, the average person, it would be one of their top 3 things. They want to protect the environment up here. It's a major deal. We've done very well at that here. I think we've got a very good proven track record of having done that in the past. How do we do that now moving forward? And then, there's a lot of civic pride associated with this too. It's great when we have the school tours come through, and they love to look at the stuff, and they love to, that's amazing stuff, and the teachers, it's almost universal, the teachers coming with comments of, I didn't even know this was here. I want to turn that around. I want people to be like, you've been down to that facility, it's amazing, it's cool, and part of that could potentially involve updating some of our facilities and putting us in a position like that. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm sure we do. I just want to clarify that this is a discussion item.
That's correct.
Even though an attachment to the presentation is a full scope of work and a proposal from Corolla, we're not being asked at this point to approve that. That's not on the agenda to approve that. It's just looking for feedback and direction from staff, if that scope is what we're looking for or not.
That's right.
Okay. Great. With that, I'll open it up. Questions from the board?
My question would be...
I got a question, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Go ahead, Dale.
It appears that we're relying on Carrillo for any of the data that we're looking at. Is CH2M Hill qualified to look into this situation? CH2M Hill we use exclusively on our VNR, and are they qualified to do any research on this nutrient removal situation?
Yeah, Dale, they are. Numerous consultancies would be qualified to do it. We're using Carollo at this point because of their intimate knowledge of the master plan. Since they were the ones that developed it in the first place, they have a lot of that institutional knowledge already. So we spoke with them first because we assumed that it would be a lot less lifting work for them.
And they were the consultants for the Logan, Utah project?
No,
No, they weren't.
no.
Do we know who the consultants that Logan, Utah used for their project?
Yeah, it's in the article.
And have we thought about talking to them about discussing this project?
I mean, that option is definitely on the table.
Because they seems to me if they developed an 18 million gallon a day project, and it seems to me like they already know what the process is. They know what the procedure is. It seems to me that they would be a good group to talk to.
Yeah, I agreed, Dale. So at this point, just so we can be completely clear, this is a proposal just to do a study. The whole process out of this, we would get the 10% design. We would have to go to design after this study if we chose to go with one of these alternatives. There would still be a process of getting the design completed and getting a construction company. So
if we move forward with this, then we put out an RFP for a design consultant group that would have some hands-on experience with this type of procedure.
So for the study, we would not RFP. For the design of what we determine is best, yes.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
And we have the option of, floating an RFP for this design. The scope's, the order of $750,000. But I understand, Carollo has a lot of pre-existing knowledge that likely anybody else would have to do a lot of groundwork. Thank you, Dale. Dave?
Well, I was looking at we had a master plan in place and we were going along with that. And this almost seems to be like another master plan. So what happens 3 years hence that we do another master plan? I mean, technology is changing. I'm a little bit, at sea. I was thinking more of a step-by-step program of getting into this with our existing facility. But the whole thing seems to me, and I'm really not clear on it, but the whole thing seems to me that we're talking about a whole new facility, potentially.
That potential exists for sure.
Yeah.
Ultimately, so to touch on your comment about it being every 3 years, to some degree that is the intent. In moving forward is to revisit any planning documents we have on some period, 5 years, 3 years, whatever it may be. It's very, very difficult to take a 25-year planning document and have it have the level of specificity and detail necessary for it to be a ready-to-go type list of projects. You're talking 20 years into the future, it's more of a rough projection. You're talking 5 years into the future, you're doing it.
We did invest a lot of money in a master plan. I think it was the direction of the management team at that point to direct the consultant to really look at how do we maintain these existing facilities, and keep them, what are we going to need to do to keep this exact facility presented. I don't know who you said anecdotally kind of said, once we make this first investment in line, we're really committing ourselves to this long process. I think it was great that person spoke up. We got new staff. I think, Richard's kind of tongue-in-cheek has said, are we putting lipstick on a pig? I don't want to call our facility a pig. You know, it may still be the right process to maintain this huge investment. I think, you know, our connection fee study indicated we've got, you know, close to $500 million of fixed assets here, and to abandon those is, you know, that's a big step. But, you know, so is investing another $250,000 to replace it or to repair it if it's not really the right step. And so I understand, you know, it is a little painful to be revisiting kind of a master plan, but I think it's insightful of staff to do that. I think it makes sense to make sure that we're not that we're doing the right thing. The you know, the scope is a little confusing for me. I don't know whether, you know, there's the ability to, you know, float at a higher level. Do the 10% design seems kind of a strange component of this analysis. I mean, it seems like for this alternatives analysis, and we've got, you know, a column with our status quo fix. We got our master plan. We know what sort of is involved with that, and then we have these alternatives that we're going to look at from a capital perspective, from an operations and maintenance perspective, from a, you know, there's a number of different criteria, footprint, you know, there's a lot of stuff, operational, I think, you know, that we're going to want to have in that analysis. But at a very high level, you know, look at all those so that we can say, you know, okay, we're not going to be down to the dollars. We're going to be, you know, it's going to be a plus or minus on the cost side, certainly, you know, tens of millions of dollars plus or minus, but it'll give us that general scope. We'll get a good idea. I think there's enough existing technology out there to understand how those impact, you know, electricity and, you know, operation maintenance costs, labor, and the other benefits, and that, you know, we can then, that decision point, you know, then would launch into the 10, possibly 10% design, or even, you know, a bigger design project. And so I was a little confused in the scope as to what this 10% design was, when we're really trying to kind of keep it at a high level and look at all the alternatives. And, well, we're not going to have, you know, I don't want to spend the money to play them all out to a full design. That doesn't make any sense. We should be able to, at a high level, get a good comparison and understand the pros and cons of all of them. And so, but you know, I'm with Dale. At first I'm like, oh my God, or with Dave, we're redoing the master plan, but I get what we did before, and I think it's good for us before we just kind of blindly launch into it and start investing tons of money to make sure that money's going towards the right project. Go ahead, Dan.
Sure. So I like the fact he used the term leading edge versus bleeding edge. I'm always cautious about being on the bleeding edge of technology. I think following up on Dave's comments, you know, when this first came up, I had similar thoughts about, well, gee, are we just throwing away the effort that we went through a few years ago? Got to come up with that master plan. And as I thought about it more, for myself, I came to the conclusion that we're not. I mean, that was if we hadn't done it then, and instead now we were saying, hey, let's look at the future of the plant, but with a broader scope. I think our scope last time was, let's just look at kind of rehabbing and replacing facilities at the existing plant and understand what that looks like at a high level. It didn't include, well, let's compare that against a more holistic kind of start over in some areas type of an effort. So as I see it, this is really building on the work we did previously with the master plan, where we know what it's going to take to maintain our current facility, and I'm in no way convinced that we need to deviate from that right now. Like to go to a whole new facility, I know this isn't talking about a whole new facility, but to go to new treatment processes and that kind of a major overhaul, I would need to feel very comfortable that that's the right way to go in the long run.
That's where I'm at, yeah.
Yeah, I do think it's worth looking at it, because at that, spent $750,000 now that could be money spent where we come to the conclusion that we wanted to stick with our previous master plan. At least we would know that we asked and answered the question for ourselves. But if it turns out there is a more cost-effective or overall improved way of doing business in the future, and we miss that opportunity, that wouldn't be good either. So I'm supportive of moving forward on it. I got a couple of detailed questions, and I think some of it follows up on what Dave was saying. Is I'm assuming we would be looking. Would we go so deep as to be thinking about if we were to go to a more to a new treatment process, how that could be phased with the? I'm assuming that would be a part of this study, right? Is how that would phase in.
Yep. Constructability.
Because we would be using portions of our existing plant in the future under any scenario, and figuring out how to effectively build new treatment processes while the existing plant is working, I think would be an important piece of the puzzle which we would want to be clear on.
That's correct.
And I think that would answer some questions in terms of, how much land we might need to move in this direction.
All of it.
Yeah. I'm also curious, maybe you could pull up the schedule or have the milestones on it, that slide.
The tasks.
And there were some workshops listed in there.
Yep.
So what I wanted to understand is what staff is envisioning the touch points would be with the board. So, the next touch point would be if we decide to move forward today would be to get the more formal work scope developed with Carollo, and then that would come back to us as a board at a future meeting for review and approval. I think that would be our first, or our next point of contact. But then after that, once we get into the work, the actual work of implementing the project, where do you see check-ins with the board happening?
To the level that the board wants to be involved. We've even discussed having a subcommittee that exists purely to just communicate with these workshops.
So if we go down, there's like tasks 3, 4, and 5. There's some workshops shown there.
Yep.
Were those envisioned as workshops with the board, or those workshops with all the plant staff?
That would be great if there was board involvement in those workshops. Yeah.
So maybe one of the things that could be done as part of the preparation of the next work scope, of the more detailed work scope, I should say, would be to include points in time where there'd be check-ins with the full board as the study materializes. That way Carollo would understand how many board meetings they're needing to plan on participating in, and we could better understand. This is a big enough effort. I wouldn't want to just have this approve the work scope and have it come back with a recommendation 2 years from now after the work's been completed to do X, Y, or Z without having kind of some intermediate steps.
Of course, and as Jason mentioned, we've had internal conversations about floating maybe perhaps an ad hoc committee. Jason mentioned the tours, which I don't know if he's going to mention that later. He pre-named me a little bit. We're going to be lining up tours, and we're going to open that up to the board to go with staff to tour these other facilities to look at some of these technologies that we're interested in. Give an opportunity for frontline question and answers if we go with those other agencies as well. So,
right. So, my kind of personal approach to things is that if it's not broke, don't fix it. Right. I don't feel like our current plant is broken. I feel like it probably could function with our current technology for a long period of time. But that said, I'm not closed-minded to moving in a different direction. I just need to feel very comfortable that that's what is in the best long-term interest. of the agency. And then another thing that would be helpful for me, as we're talking about what are the benefits of a different treatment process with less chemical usage, and other things that come to mind would be, is there more flexibility with some of these alternative treatment processes that we don't currently have that make them more adaptable to new technology going forward? And I know that's a bit of a hypothetical question, but that's something I'd be curious about. In terms of using fewer chemicals, that sounds good on the surface, but I like getting rid of liquid chlorine. That's different than using less lime, right? Just there's this piece of it of how bad of a chemical is it, or how unsafe of a chemical is it that we're potentially eliminating the need to use, versus is it relatively inert, organic materials that we're just using less of? So it purely is just a cost issue as compared to, there may be the environmental component that you mentioned. There may be some chemicals that if we reduce the use of them, there's more environmental benefit or more societal benefit than others, right? And I don't pretend to understand that, but that would be, if we're talking about that being one of the benefits of potentially going to a new treatment process, I'd want to understand that next level below, and not just assume that because we're using less of something, that's a huge benefit. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
I think on that, Dan, the biggest consideration internally is we're reading tea leaves a little bit on future compliance requirements, and TDS is a big thing potentially. Any chemical you don't add is TDS you don't have. So that's kind of our main internal drive on chemical reduction. Okay,
and that understanding those types of things would be helpful from my perspective. I think that's it for now. I'm supportive of moving forward with this effort. I guess one last question. So the scope of work that's in here, it's, at least as I see it, it's kind of like a high level, more of a summary level. So what do you envision, like from between what we're looking at right now in terms of the work scope that was attached to this staff report versus the one that we would be approving? Are you seeing, what are you seeing as the level of additional information that would be in that?
That would really be based on you guys' feedback. We're pretty happy with what we've got here at the level that it's at. If the board would need more detail on anything, let us know. We can get more detail on it. We can blow up the scope a little bit more and get it a little bit more detailed. We kind of liked this approach because it did give us a lot of opportunities to change direction and drive the direction we felt was making most sense.
Okay.
So a little bit of the lack of specificity was actually kind of a feature for us.
Okay. Yeah, I'm probably just used to $750,000 contracts having larger, kind of more detailed work scopes as compared to this. It feels generic. That doesn't mean it's a little more generic. It doesn't mean that it won't work.
We can certainly work with them to elaborate out the points, to bring some more detail to each of the points as well as whatever questions or additional some things like you just mentioned about why is chemical usage a big deal to us. We can navigate those a little deeper in the scope so we have a clear deliverable.
Right.
And it seems, maybe I'm missing something, but it seems like what we're interested in is this alternatives analysis. Do we want to go with kind of the master plan as developed or an alternative? And the end point of the study, or at least one end point of the study, is what is our path forward? We're going to have this very complicated matrix of all the alternatives and lots of different criteria, and we're going to weight them and come up with a thing, and then eventually, I think it's going to probably be a board decision, a staff recommendation, but a board decision as to which one of these are we going with. And that seems like at least the end point, and then that launches into, okay, we've decided this, now let's move forward with that decision point, whereas sort of this scope, it's in there, but it seems kind of almost buried, and it doesn't seem like that's really the clear endpoint. It jumps into this 10% design, and I don't know whether that's staff's desire to fast track the approach, but it seems like I don't know. If there was a scope of work, I'd be envisioning it's like an alternatives analysis, and then at the end of that, we say, yeah, we're going to go. We want to do this kind of Barden Foe method, or MBRs, or stick with this, and then okay, the direction now is to go somewhere else, rolling in 10% of something we don't even know when it exists, and we have a cost estimate on it. Seems a little bit, getting ahead,
so there could be
of ourselves.
two different.
Yeah, it seems like the scope could be. We know that there's going to be future stuff after that, but the end point is a decision on what's our alternative. And again, I understand it's going to be a high level. We want a real relative amount of detail in that alternatives analysis. I guess I was a little surprised at the. It's not a huge amount, but it's still $60,000 on gathering baseline information, kind of task 2, and evaluating existing facilities, which to me, that stuff was all done in the current master plan. And I know that they probably need to be updated, but it seemed like a little bit of a fair amount of work that we've already invested, and that we've got a lot of that information, that we don't need a lot of effort on our baseline information or our existing facilities. We know that from our master plan. What we really need to do is define the alternatives that we want to look at and the criteria we want to evaluate them by, and have a really nice comparison there to come back. I don't know. I'm looking at my fellow board members and staff to see if that makes sense, or
yeah, well, it does make sense, and I think our intent is throw this stuff in a funnel and come out with a path or recommended treatment process that after board approval we would then take to the 10%, because then that's where we're going for the next 5-10 years as far as design construction. So what you're saying, that totally makes sense. We can work with the scope to better capture these points. Some of the existing facility evaluation, again, the master plan is a very high level look. As you guys recall, we just had to do recarb clarifier emergency repairs because they're leaking. It's to dive in a little bit deeper. One thing the master plan we looked at was seismic upgrades. What's going to trigger a seismic upgrade when we start doing this work, and those added costs there. So some of that reevaluation of the existing facilities is to take that deeper look at those facilities.
Scott, thoughts?
It's odd that this happened, but since I've been on the board, I've heard a lot of times from a lot of different people that this plant was cutting edge and it was kind of world famous, and people would come and visit it. And that was, I believe, 1975. And when I walked in this morning and looked over the door, it was, the considerable awards that the plant has won over the years. Well, the last one was 33 years ago, 1991, right?
Yes.
And when I look at this, there are a lot of things that I really like. And first and foremost is the critical thinking that staff has come up with. Because we have something with our master plan that, to me, is relatively defined. But the critical thinking is saying, okay, here's $150 million to get to where we want to be over the next X amount of years. But if we look outside the parameters a little bit, based on new technology, potential of environmental concerns that would be mitigated, I like that. I mean, I like the idea of that, but looking at $270 million also kind of was an eye-opener. And the one question, and I don't know if we have an answer, the picture of the Logan plant being 2023 being due and 18 million. And looking at the scope of Carollo as a company, my question would be, have they created something like the Logan plant that perhaps we could visit, or we could see the O&M or those type of things? Because one of the things as we look into the future is that, from a staffing perspective, on a monthly basis, it's not unusual for us to spend $200,000 on electricity and chemicals. And if we could find a way to cut those in half, that's a pretty big chunk of the O&M, right? And I like those ideas, but I agree 100% with what everybody else has said. Is like trying to take the parameters in my mind and put it into what the next plan is. The 10% is like, I don't even know what the 10% is, to be honest with you. Right. It seems like 10% of a potentially 1975 world famous plant, but I don't know what those numbers are, and I'm concerned, and I totally agree with what everybody has said. We need to probably take it at a step-by-step basis, and with the board being involved in it, I feel much more comfortable with that. Sorry to ramble.
No, that's good. That's good input.
This was the feedback we wanted to refine everything and then bring it back for approval.
Yeah, so just final thoughts on the work scope. Really, I'm going to be looking to staff to your level of comfort so that, a good scope of work is defined well enough so that you don't have to have arguments about whether work should be included, like later on, if you start getting tight on budget, it's, why was that? Is it because it was out of scope work, or is it because of, or is it because the consulting team wasn't as efficient as they had hoped to be when they gave us the proposal? And I think having enough enough detail in the work scope so that when you get further into the project and you're dealing with invoice payment and whatnot, it's easier to discern that. So that's I'd really look to staff to make sure you guys are comfortable that you'll be able to do that.
Okay. Also, I stand corrected. The Logan plant was designed by Carollo.
And I think you guys just threw that in as an example.
It was just an example.
It's not like, hey, let's go.
It's a nice
see if we want to go
coincidence,
build the Logan plant. It's just, it was just, hey, here's something.
Exactly.
Point of reference.
It was a point of reference for what everyone's seeing from constructability cost right now.
Yeah,
exactly.
23. Talking with Brian Wright at TPUD at our local GM's meeting, he was talking about the costs they're even seeing in where some of their tanks, it's turning out cheaper to replace than it is to retrofit and rehab. So it was just a point of, we're kind of at this crossroads of which direction we go, because once we commit, we're committed.
Right.
Which is the best road to go down for the agency long term. And so.
Right.
And Tim had a comment.
Yeah. The objective of the site tours is to take you to facilities that we've worked on that are similar to TTSA. The unique nature of the tourist transient environment here with the environmental factors, the snow and all the cold weather. We would take you to Telluride that we've worked on, or other places like Eagle River up in Vail and Edwards and those places where we've done a ton of work, similar plants, similar types of issues. That's the driver behind those visits.
Is there any interest from the board to develop an ad hoc committee as we move forward to participate in the workshops? Throw that out there.
Might be helpful. Why don't you put it on the agenda for the next board meeting?
Okay.
Whenever we approve the scope of work.
I'm looking at the screen there, and Dan was talking about touch points with the board, and I like the highlights that you put on there. Certainly, defining the criteria early on. They can get tweaked later as we figure out that there's things that we probably should have included, but I think that's definitely a good touch point. Obviously capital costs, operating costs, talking about chemical usage. We talked about a bunch of these things, but I think that would be an early on, touch point with us to say, yeah, that looks like those are the criteria we want to evaluate them on. Existing facilities, I'm still a little confused on that one, but, basically you come back and, you come up with the list of alternatives to the existing plant that we're going to compare. There'd probably be a touch point there. And then eventually that, here they are, and we've now, rated them on all these criteria, plus some other ones that we've come up with, and, and eventually, hopefully, staff recommendation on what you think is the best alternative to go forward and the board action to proceed, and that's where we, launch into scopes of work for, design stuff. Some of that item, task 4, again, seems a little bit confusing in that it seems like the end of that point is developing alternatives, comparing alternatives, select alternative, and then there should be a task 5, which is kind of goes into, developing that selected alternative, that constructability assessment, power load assessment. They're going to have to be at a very high level, but those are part of the criteria, I think. Those are criteria that are in the comparison of the alternatives. But once we've selected it, if those are important elements, we understand,
Yeah, just a couple of criteria that come to mind that may be already on your radar, but there's like a physical feasibility, right? There's like the physical part of that in terms of how you build it, but there's a financial piece of it. Because I'd always envisioned with, if we're going to basically rehab the existing plant over time, it's going to be in smaller pieces, right, as compared to, and it might involve some borrowing here and there, but it's more feasible to do it on more of a cash flow basis as compared to if we're going to go in a completely new direction. That's a major borrowing that we would need to do against future revenue, and there's costs associated with that as well that we'd want to understand.
And it might be good to avoid this sort of scope creep issue that, and Tim, you guys have done this for a lot of different plans, defining the scope at a minimum. The evaluation criteria are likely to include such and such, so that, when we say, oh, we wanted power, define those to begin with, so that things that we think were, clearly should have been part of it aren't something that you guys thought, well, no, that really wasn't part of the scope, and all of a sudden we're, having to renegotiate the scope. So I think defining that, when we see the scope, at a minimum, these are the criteria, and so some work on your part with the consultant to kind of help define those criteria that the alternatives are being analyzed on would be good. I think this is great. Again, I applaud staff for taking this step back before we just, started investing large sums of money, or even, small sums that lock us in to things that aren't necessarily the right step. I know there's a desire to get moving with our capital plan, but and this is going to delay that process a little bit, but at least I think we'll move forward with more confidence that we're taking the right steps as we move forward. So,
are you comfortable moving forward, Dave?
Well, in a sense, I am. I'm still concerned that we were talking about another segment of time, and when do we set the level of technology that we're going to accept, that we're going to go with? And a year into this, we'll find out, oh no, there's another better way to go. That bothers me.
Right. Continually chases things. Next best thing.
Chase, yeah. Good.
That's something that we all deal with on every part of life, with the constantly improving technology. I mean, at some point, once we invest money and the design, we're going to be.
But we did that 50 years ago, and we're kind of stuck with it. Now we're making a big move. This,
Yeah, and it's
possibly-
engineered. It's
possibly.
engineered life is,
Yeah.
for a lot of these facilities are kind of up in it. I think this is a good decision point when we make this decision to move with, whether it's rehabbing this or some other technology. We're going to be pretty committed, and we may kick ourselves if 5 years down the road our industry discovers this miracle treatment that we didn't go with.
Yeah.
We're going to be biting ourselves, but we can't just sit and wait forever because it never ends. Hopefully, innovation continues, forever. But
Yeah, I understand that part of it. Just back to what I said before.
Right.
We played our nickel on 50 years ago, and now it's a big decision.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I guess I want to counsel staff, again, the lipstick on a pig kind of is there's some semantics in the way we're saying that really is like, we're not going to do that. Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to presuppose that we're not. This is a good plant, this may be the alternative that we go with, and we need to look at it objectively, but, this doesn't. I think it's good for us to look at alternatives, but it's very possible that the best alternative for it is continuing to rehab the existing plant. So not to bash the plant because...
or maybe step-by-step changes rather than a major change to new technology.
I think it would have to be a step-by-step. I mean, Dan, I think we...
That may not work, though.
We've got to take a look at what capital is going to be involved and work towards a final goal, and it may be that we can't move as fast and as far ahead as we would want to. But I do go back to the fact that we're at an inflection point right now. We've got the master plan, and then we've got the new thinking, and I think we have to take into consideration technology has come a long way. And, I have simple questions, we're doing the sodium hypochlorite. Will that be involved in this, or is that something that's just going to be on the side that we may not use?
In this particular instance, that's a facility we're keeping.
Yeah.
But again, those conversations are going to evolve a lot based on compliance, based on those driving factors. So,
And didn't you also say something about give me just a second, but new regulations and the direction things are going, that there are going to be some, to everybody's best knowledge, going to be some significant changes as far as what the regulations are.
Potentially. We're reading tea leaves on that. There's a lot of facilities in the Nevada area that are making substantial changes because of tightening restrictions on watersheds.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't heard anything specific about our particular area, but it is a very sensitive area. It's kind of at the whim of whatever the regulators choose to do.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, we don't have a reason to believe they're going to clamp down on us, but it is definitely a consideration we do need to be aware of.
Tim, appreciate you coming. You heard a lot of feedback. You guys appreciate the scope that you put together. Obviously, there's been some feedback on that. Any concerns you have about the direction you've heard?
No, I don't know.
From the
It all
board?
makes sense.
Okay.
I mean, our objective is to make you guys feel comfortable with the evaluation and direction that we're moving. So we're happy to add detail to the scope and come back and talk about it again.
Good. So most of you guys in the audience were here to listen in on this discussion. If you guys have, Richard, you don't mind?
No.
Seeking some input from staff. If anybody had any other feedback, you guys are intimately going to be involved in this process, and so if you have thoughts on the scope of work, obviously I'm sure you're communicating with your managers and the GM as well, but anything at this point, I'll open it up to staff. Scott?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Blake. Thanks for listening to staff feedback. I think when we were putting the scope together, one of the pieces with the 10%, just to touch on that a bit, was we wanted to make sure whatever alternative was selected was implementable to the plant. So if it is a sequenced approach for constructability reasons and also financially, we wanted to ensure that we were going to get a product that, oh wait, that's a great technology, but how do we actually put it in here? So that however we capture that 10% or other piece, we just want to make sure if it is an alternative that's not rehabilitating the plant. The other comment I would ask, and maybe Tim can comment on this, out of all the facilities you see around the country, how many are still using hydrated lime or lime slurry for phosphorus removal?
Not very many. In fact, most of the facilities that we talk about in Utah, they're getting away from that. They're all moving away from that.
They have phosphorus limits in Utah. New plants
So
going in.
lime and calcium, it's going by the way of the wayside for the similar issues that you're dealing with right now.
And two of the alternatives here, they're not like bleeding or cutting edge. They're pretty well established at this point. So they've been around for 20 plus years at this time. They're well tested. They're just a more modern process for how we can treat nutrient removal and more efficient. And so I've been here about 6 years, and what I always keep hearing from operations is, when are we getting the new lime system, specifically lime conveyance? And we've been kicking that can down the road because of cost and being one of those people.
Like safety and health of all too. I'm an operator. I have to deal with the lime, and it is not fun stuff. Like, and no matter how many safety precautions you take, it's terrible.
Yeah, and just so you guys are aware, we budgeted $450,000 this year for the lime conveyance system to take our lime and hydrate it into lime slurry. That was I'm just going to lay it out there. I spoke with an expert over at Corolla regarding how to do it the full bore way if we were going to actually revamp the system versus doing it on the budget amount. And it was, I'm just going to say it was an untested method for how we could potentially save money to convey that lime to the lime slurry tank. So if you're looking at it, and this is just one piece of the phosphorus removal aspect, so between seismic concerns Jason touched on and others, I'm nervous if we don't do this evaluation, we're going to be in a situation where we're going to end up spending more money than is anticipated long term, and that's that $200+ million estimate that Aaron worked on that staff thinks is going to be the actual number we're going to see. So I think my opinion is, I'm just going to state it on the record, I think we need to do this study to best look at long-term alternatives for the facility for nutrient removal.
Thanks, Scott. Anybody else?
Yes.
Feedback? Go ahead, Dale.
I think this has been a very healthy discussion. We owe it to our constituents to do the best job we can, but we have a limited budget, to move forward with this kind of conversation. But, I don't think it would hurt to move forward very cautiously and investigate whether or not this would be a good fit for us.
Thank you, Dale. Anything else from the board? I think at this point we've provided some good direction, hopefully.
Yeah, I think we got good direction, and we'll work on the scope. I'll work with sending it out to the board and getting it refined over the next month so that we can come back next month with all your concerns, questions answered in the scope and move forward.
Yeah, and just one other detail on the comparables. I'd be curious with other plants in similar environments we're looking at what their discharge point is. Are they going straight to the water body, or are they doing soil injection like we are? Okay. And then what's the relevance of that in our decision making? I don't know the answer to that. But.
Okay.
Super. At this point, if there's nothing else, we'll close item 1. Thank you, Jason.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tim, again for showing up.
Thank you guys for your feedback too.
Yep. Now we're going to do a deep dive.
Can we take a break?
Yeah, why don't we take a 5-minute recess? And then we'll reconvene at 10:35. 5-2, consideration of approval of a consultant services agreement to develop a network upgrade preliminary design report for the SCADA IT master plan.
Good morning. All right, so as some of you may recall, back in August of 2021, the Board of Directors awarded Jacobs Engineering, also noted as CH2M Hill, a contract to provide the agency with a very comprehensive SCADA IT master plan. So SCADA is our supervisory control and data acquisition systems. That's responsible for everything that we control throughout the plant. That's how our operators operate the plant. That's tied to all of our programmable logic controllers, controls valves, switches, you name it.
Recording in progress.
It monitors everything throughout the plant. So that's how we know the condition of the plant and how it's operating. It's vital to the operation of this facility. So that SCADA IT master plan assessed the current condition of the agency's technology, the components, and then compared existing technology against industry standards and provided implementation planning for identified improvements. We have during that process, it was identified that we have various different vintages of logic controllers, equipments, and components that feed into this system. So back in June of 22, the final IT SCADA master plan was presented and accepted by the board of directors. That plan had 3 major phases that were broken into 8 sub-projects. There were several of those sub-projects, like in phase 1, that were foundational. You're going to be hearing about one of them later today with regards to standards. We haven't really had good documented standards on how we proceed and how we design all these systems that are so vital for what we do here. Another one of these revolves around the network and security. This particular agenda item is revolving around that network upgrade. We have some old multi-mode optics that go throughout this entire facility that connect all the programmable logic controllers, computers, touch screens. Everything is using that mode of communications throughout the plant. It's old, it's antiquated, and it has bandwidth limitations. That was identified as one of the major foundational projects in the IT SCADA master plan. And what we're requesting here today is to allow Jacobs Engineering to come in and provide a preliminary design report that would give us a lot more detail on how to go about that. What needs to be replaced? How do we do that? And what a much better defined cost of services to do that. That'll also get us into, similar to the last agenda item, into that 10% design as well. We know we're moving forward with this. We know we're going to keep going with it. But by getting into that 10% design, it allows us to get into those finer details to really refine those costs and know what we're doing, and how we're going to do it. So we did choose Jacobs for this particular agenda item since they've been so heavily involved throughout this IT SCADA master plan. In our opinion, they've been uniquely qualified to offer this scope of services just because we don't have to go to anybody else to relearn the system, to reassess the system, and virtually start from scratch. So they can get a head start on this. And they were able to offer this at a cost of $61,505. We do have in the budget $188,000. So this is significantly less than that. So our hope is to use those additional funds to get us further down the design route as we proceed through this process.
Quick question. How did we miss with 188,000?
So that was based on the original IT SCADA master plan. Those were numbers that were pulled directly off of that, and that encompassed having somebody come in and design it from scratch. This does not do that. This only gets us to that 10% route and gives us that level of detail that we need to know. Again, similar to like the last agenda item, how are we going to do this? It's much bigger than what we can handle in-house.
Okay.
So, how many feet are estimated? What pieces of equipment? What type of fiber network? What bandwidth do we need to suit us now and into the future?
Okay.
This should give us that level of detail and a lot more granular breakdown of the costs.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any questions?
I guess, it goes back to the previous one. I mean, we're looking at alternatives on our entire kind of carbon and nutrient removal system. I don't know what the ultimate level of investment in getting all this SCADA out to a lot of those facilities that we're doing this alternatives analysis on are what the SCADA system looks at, and we're going to move forward to upgrade all that. But what if alternatives analysis says? I mean, it's kind of like the line system. Is there any kind of concern that this? I mean, are we at such a critical point here with the condition of our SCADA network communications that this is a must-do and not something that should be, I hate to say band-aided until we make a decision on the direction we want to go?
I would say yes. During the IT SCADA master plan, we identified several bottlenecks. Currently, we're getting some data collisions and we're having some issues with data dropouts because we're at the maximum limit of our bandwidth. Also, the condition, we're losing, in some cases, some of the fiber pairs. They're starting to break down and cause us additional problems. So we may not have the redundancy in certain cases to where we could switch to a backup fiber network. So it's concerning. Fortunately, in this, it's not quite as broad as in the last agenda item. There's multi-mode versus single mode. There's not yes, there's some finer details on bandwidth and things like that.
Yeah, I wasn't so concerned about you doing an alternatives analysis on but just, I don't know, we're talking about, $1 million to upgrade all the communications to our existing nutrient removal system. Mm-hmm. And then we also are deciding to, abandon the nutrient removal system, and maybe that's a 5-year process, and did we need to invest, just as we're holding off on the line thing, because do we want to make that, $1 million investment in something that we're going to choose to? So just again, it's scary to think of you guys operating and having communication not coming back and getting we've got in our district, 44 pump stations, and when we go to a data fails situation, it's not a good thing to be flying blind and not know what's happening there. And so, if you're getting those, I just want to confirm that you guys feel strongly that this is a project that needs to move forward.
Yeah, and I don't think being that this is like a network backbone, it wouldn't be a sunk cost even if through the other study we identified that we were going to go with the new technology.
Okay.
This would still be the backbone of it. And we're still looking at, even if we do that, that's 5-10 years by the time we go through design, construction, and all that. And as everyone knows, IT technology stuff lasts about 10, 15, 20 years if you're lucky. So we would get our money's worth out of this project as we move forward. And it resolves some of the current issues that we're having with communications.
And will the design look at not creating firewalls such that we design it for our existing plant, and then we do something else? Can we provide hubs or whatever so that it's expandable? Whatever the design report looks at that and make sure that if we do a parallel plant decision, that we should have put that little T-junction box or something like that. Now we got to go back and,
This would absolutely support that, because any sort of expansion to our operations or change to the facility layout even would represent a node or an offshoot of that main hub. There would be media converters and switches and things in there that could actually just offshoot from that. So you're talking about a small portion of the network ultimately. Unfortunately, too, this also does lead us into the next, part of this project, because we've got some PLC replacements that rely on redundancy. Without this network upgrade, we couldn't move on to that next phase. So it's highly reliant on that.
Anything else from the board?
No, I'm in favor.
We're good. All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the contract with Jacobs for $61,000 and change.
So moved.
Moved by Director Cox.
Second.
Seconded by Director Wilson. Any other comments or the board from the public? Do a roll call.
Director Wilson,
Yes.
Director Cox,
Yes.
Director Wilkins,
Yes.
Director Smelser,
Yes.
and Director Tresson.
Yes. Okay.
Motion approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Appreciate it. At this time, I'd also like to introduce Luke Swan for some of the other later or the next agenda items. He'll be doing the presentations for those. So, all right.
President Preston and Board, good morning. Yes, I'm Luke Swan. I've been here about over 3 years now, and I'm the new IT supervisor. So, trying to pick up and take on some of the new stuff. Everybody says we're at a crossroads here at the agency where we're maybe pressing on into some new technology and a new era with the agency, and so happy to be a part of it and help drive forward a lot of this stuff. So, so today. Wanted to come talk about, present on our some of the deliverables on our state IT master plan. So it was first presented to Board of Directors, Paul Richard, presented it back in 2022, and so now we've got some of so that presented that we created the plan. Now we have some of the deliverables that the plan created for us. Myself, Paul, Ryan, the E&I supervisor, and Kevin Woods, also the IT specialist, all worked on this together and worked with Jacobs, Jason Hayes, and his team on creating some of this. It was very important to create this. This creates, like Paul mentioned, the standards. What is going to be our roadmap? What's going to be our Bible on when we start building things, our technology, our roadmap for future projects, either for in-house or for outside consultants and contractors. Guiding principles for future employees, for them to have something to look back on for succession planning for people that we bring up. When we request bids and proposals, do we have a document to hand to them that says, hey, we want you to build it like this? Right now it's kind of like, oh, we think this, we think it, we did it this way before. No, now we're going to have something that says, hey, build it to this. These are the standards, these are our specs. Yes, sir, sorry.
We're hitting actually item 4 on the agenda.
Okay,
so if it's okay with the board, since Luke started, we'll finish 4 and then jump back to 3, which is the approval for the.
Okay. Did I skip? Sorry.
It's the fun of getting up and being in the public.
Although nobody on the board has ever done that.
Jump back.
It's the cool one in it.
Does the board get a movement forward at item 4?
Yeah, when I read the agenda, I thought this one would be a good one.
Yeah.
Possibly to come early anyway.
I did. You are right.
I'm right. I believe you. Yeah. Go ahead, and we'll jump back to.
Thank you for entertaining me. I don't have to redo. I can come back and redo the introduction again. So like I said, we're not going to receive one-offs. We're not going to, for in-house projects. We have a standard to follow. An example being this new hypochlorite project, and we're going to replace the chlorine gas with hypochlorite. We're building. Ryan's in charge of building new panels. We're going to have a standard where we can start building this stuff out. We have something where we're not just grabbing wire off the shelf. We got something going on. So, so we'll move with that. Move into the slides. So I wanted to. Sorry, now I have to wear glasses for my long distance. I will highlight 4 different areas that I want to focus on. So, like I said, this is technology. It's control. It's automations, controls. So hopefully I can explain with clarity on what we're trying to do. So 4 different areas: database naming, control objects, HMI, which is a graphical interface which the operators use, and then hardware, which is taking in all the inputs and output, and then manipulating it, and then sending outputs to the field. So for database naming, we want to focus on consistency, clarity, scalability. For control objects, modularity, reusability, and scalability. HMI is consistent design and user-centric. And then for hardware, consistent design and hardware replacement schedules, and then wiring standards. So we'll go focus on each one of those kind of individually. I'll try and take some high level. So database naming, something. It's like, what are you talking about? So we all want consistency when we call something, right? If I call something the desk, we all know what a desk is. That's what we focus on in our PLC standards. Consistent tag creation helps users understand how the system works in detailed ways. I want to back up just a second. So during these workshops, we discussed new methods and current standards, what we had going on. So that was a discussion with Kevin, Ryan, Paul, and myself. We said, hey, we want to, because Jacobs presented 3 or 4 different styles that we had, and that they had seen around different industries, and they're like, well, what do you guys like? What do you use now? So we had a big discussion, and eventually we came to consensus, we'll keep what we have. It was too much work to change everything in the process. We've been using this tagging standard for quite a time here, so we stayed on that. And I'll pop back at the top too. So database naming involves what's called tag or tagging. writing something logically into the database saying this is what this is. It's used for marking data that resides inside programmable logic controllers, PLCs. So once a input comes in for like a level transmitter, you tag it, you put a name to it, and then from there on, when you manipulate it within the PLC, you use that tag in different places. So it ensures so you have a consistent tag across all devices, knowing what this tag is. Increases technician efficiency by helping identify specific criteria regarding the data. By tagging things a certain way, my next slide, but not yet, it talks about how we do that. Like certain numbers mean certain things, certain letters mean certain things, and that's consistent across everything that we use. If you see the word LT, it means level transmitter. If you see the word AT, it means an analyzer. You know that. If you see the numbers, the first two numbers of 7.1, you know that's the dewatering building. You across the way, you know exactly how how that tag is laid out. You can identify you can dive deeper into what it is, where it's at, and what loop it's on. Now, it doesn't necessarily get you to physically out there at the system and know exactly where the piece of equipment at is, but logically within the system, you know what it is and what it does. Scalability, last section. Scalability allows the system to expand without interrupting current processes. Each field equipment that comes into a PLC has a specific tag. You can't overlap, you can't rename them. So whenever you have a new piece of equipment, you put a new tag to it. You put a new tag, and if you eliminate equipment, you eliminate the tag, and it can come back as being reusable, but it allows the systems to expand and contract however you need it to without taking up memory. Is one of those things, nowadays computers have gobs and gobs of memory, and we don't ever worry about anything really in our computers or iPads or tablets and whatnot. But PLCs are still a little bit limited. They're not as robust as a modern day PC, so we do sometimes have to take into account how much memory we're using. So that's one of these things we're doing. Go to next. So this is just kind of this is a tagging example. So like LSH 99901A. Of course, this doesn't exactly apply to our system, but I just wanted to walk through. So LSH is ISA is the Instrumentation Automation Society of America. So it's one of the standards we follow. So LSH is like a level switch high, so we know what the device is. 99 is a facility code in the green, so we know what that plant and process area is. 901 in the light blue is the loop number, and A in red is a suffix, which could be like an I, an O, an S, like input, output, status, simple. So if a technician goes into the PLC and looks at that, you can understand essentially where this comes from and in what section or what area resides in the facility. So this is the standard. So going forward, we've been using this mainly already. We're going forward. This is going to be our standard. So if we get programming, we get skids from contractors, or we have consultants come in and do programming for us. So we will tell them to use this tagging standard, because in the past we have not done that. So, any questions on? I can wait till the end for questions, or we can answer them one by one.
In terms of coming up with these standards, I'm just thinking about like as new IT staff come into the organization. Is this something that would be common in the industry, or it's still going to be relatively unique to TTSA?
Both. I can say both. It's common in the industry, but this style is a little more. I won't say unique, but it's to us. This is how we use it. There's probably other plants that use probably this style. But we're from the facility that I came from. We use the same, similar, but different. Like we put a couple numbers in front, then use the letters and put a couple numbers on the suffix. So it kind of just depends on what the preference is of the plant, the technicians, and what has come before you. So like for me, I had to relearn this. It hasn't been the easiest thing, because just the way I've been before, I had like 3 numbers, 2 letters, then 2 or 3 numbers again that I had to know. But now I've got the letters in the front, then I have 5 numbers, and then some suffixes. So it's just retraining yourself, but the consistency is there for people who are.
And Luke, you've got like the phone book right now with all the different data points. How many different? I imagine there's a lot. All the different buildings and all the different inputs from each process.
We could export from our, because most, like I said, there's there's points that reside within the PLC that are manipulated by the software, and then there's points that come back into the HMI. So we have a mixture of all kinds. Like we could export all the points, and I don't have a point count. I'm sure calls, tens of thousands.
Yeah, that's how I figure probably.
Yeah.
They're constantly providing data.
And monitoring. That's correct.
Yeah. Either being an input, or an output, or being manipulated within the software. Because you have to have intermediary tags sometimes to transfer data across to different PLCs and into different calculations.
Thank you.
So we would end up, I know you haven't played out there yet, but the result of this would be almost like a manual for IT staff.
Correct.
That would be make sure people are using similar or the same protocols kind of across the organization, and when new staff come in, it will give them a clear understanding as to how we do this kind of referencing of our...
Exactly. It's our SCADA design standards. It's going to be our kind of our Bible for that.
Good responsible succession planning moving forward. So
you
staff were change.
We don't win the lotto or something and we disappear.
So with this, you guys are in the process of renaming existing tags as well as making sure that all new facilities come in with the standard.
As needed. Some already fit into this tagging standard, and as needed, others can be removed.
Okay.
Yeah, it involves, and that's the thing about tagging, is that the tag follows that device all the way through, and sometimes when you change it on one end, it doesn't get followed to the back end because other systems are looking for a specific name, so you have to be very careful in how the work is done. If you break the chain somewhere, then the whole thing falls apart. So, yes, as we do find things, and as we move forward, especially with the new projects, we are following this. All right, thank you, Michelle. Control objects. This one's I chose this one, but it's a little harder to explain. Control objects are how PLCs, we talked about manipulating the data and to control external equipment. Control objects also have to do with programming language. There's industrial programming languages are different than computer programming languages or computer code. This is what we call logic. So there's structured text, there's structured control language, there's ladder logic, there's function block diagram. The two major ones are function block diagram and ladder logic. We use kind of a combination of all four here, but going forward we're going to be with ladder logic and function block diagram. So there's a consistency in the program that we get. Before we've even gotten some projects and the consultant goes into whatever language they like to write, but that doesn't help us or technicians coming in if they're unfamiliar with those, or just like an industry standard of how people read logic. So with this, we're going to have consistent blocks, have a consistent language that we're going to be using. It helps with scalability because you can use the same, what's called a control object on multiple things. So if we have at the end of a PBS pump station or a BIPS pump station, they're pumped. Right? We don't need to be rebuilding code or logic for one pump compared to other pump. They're pumps. They can be, you just drop one control object in, and that controls that pump. Same one goes to this pump. So it increases modularity, scalability, and a user, a technician understands what the inputs are, what the outputs are on each control object, because a pump is a pump. It doesn't matter. The PLC is going to massage the data however it wants to. So Jacobs is helping us to standardize on these control objects and create them so that we'll have a library and that we're not building one-offs again or doing, whatever. Of course, there's always going to be times where we do get something that operates a little bit differently or is a little bit outside the norm, and we'll have to create, obviously, things, create logic outside of that. Overall, we'll be using a standardized library for doing this. Like an alarm block is an example too. Is you bring an alarm in like sump level high, and it attaches to one block. Well, that block has the ability to take an input, has the ability to be. Is it a latched alarm? Is it an unlatched alarm? Meaning, does somebody need to intervene and reset it manually, or is there a deadband? Like, hey, how far does this signal have to fall before it unlatches itself or resets itself? So these are things, just one alarm block that you can use, and you have multiple options to do with it. So it can be used for all kinds of different inputs from around the plant, whether it's a siren or sump level or a pump high pressure switch. So allows us to do those types of things. Standardization, so like I said, text can understand it, understand what the block does, and troubleshoot it quickly. And any questions on control objects?
Dale, you good?
I'm good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. All right. So HMI, this is one of the things I really, I won't say really like, one of my things I really have a passion for. But it's not always easy. This is one of the things. This part involves building consensus with operations too, because they're the end users of this. We talked before about this being the end user centric. Because design and alarm standards are paramount to presenting data to the operator so they can make informed, timely, and correct process decisions, right? They've got to take the information in, and whether it's not automated at that point, they've got to make decisions on what they need to do with the plant and the operation of the plant. So with this, we're going to, our new screen development is based on API 1165, which is the American Petroleum Institute, and ISA 101. They developed standards on screens on what's called high performance graphics. And these also involve having level 1 screen, which is an overview screen, and level 2 screen, which is an operation screen where you actually drill down and make changes, and then a level 3 screen, which is individual equipment. Before, operators would be back in the 90s, even the 2000s, screens were built with color and pizzazz, right? We got rotating mixers on the on the clarifiers and different stuff. So that all that does is distract from the operators. They're watching moving things when they should be looking at, I'm not going to say shit, but they need to be, they're looking at data trying to make decisions. Operators need to know what is the reading, what's the range of the reading, what part of the range is it in, and does it need to be changed at all? So they're not worried about, is that mixer going round and around, that animation. So we're going to be focusing on that. And then alarm display management. That's one of my big things. If an alarm comes in, and you don't do anything, if the operator doesn't need to react, do we need that alarm? Because all it is visual distraction from the operators, and making them have to think about something that they probably don't need to think about. So is an alarm, make sure it's important. Bring it in. Next. So next slide is just a change. So on the left-hand side is how a typical HMI graphic would be, kind of a P&ID representation of, hey, here's your pump, here's your piping diagram, here's where the flow meter's at, here's your tank, it pumps into this tank, which is good. Like I said, it follows. We do all need to know these types of processes in the plant. But when you go move to the other side, to the left or to the right-hand side, now you have, hey, here's a tank. Here's the level. It's trending at right now. And what's the range? Where's your high alarm? Where's your low alarm? And where is it right now? That's what the operators, like I said, that's what the operators care about. They're asking, hey, where do I need to be? Where should I be? Where am I right now? And do I need to make a change? Where that pipe goes, not the most important thing to them necessarily. They do need to know that, but for operating decisions, they need to know ranges, they need to know alarm points, they need to know what their goals and objectives have been set by the leadership teams. So one thing to note too, it's kind of hard, it's difficult to see on this is also this is the grayscale screens with backgrounding. Anything that would come in usually in red or yellow or some different color. Anything that stays in the background would probably what we call fade, which would be more of a grayscale, kind of a black. Doesn't really draw your attention. But anything that would be an alarm would come out as a red or a yellow, and draw attention to the operator on the place that needs to be that they need to make a decision on. But these are very important. The district I came from, we began building these screens, and we had good feedback. So, like I said, it's still a consensus with operations on what they like to see, because a lot of the industry standard is still green and red, on and off, different things like that. So then we could most likely build a hybrid. We're going to work on, like I say, building something that really works for the operations department and for it tries to adhere to the new standards.
And Luke, do I get it? Am I right in that in-house you guys are designing these screens?
Yes, we were. I think it's going to be a hybrid because, like I said, once again, manpower. Do we have enough, or person power? Do we have enough time to rebuild these, because there's a lot of rebuilding. Staff has done a lot of work over the last 20 years since the implementation to do these, and so it's not going to be overnight. And so we're unsure at this time. We're discussions on, do we use a hybrid? Do we fix screens as we can as time allows, and and then also do we have a consultant come in and help us do so? We're unsure. Any feedback on that, Paul?
Yeah, I think it's a heavy lift given the limited amount of staff that we have. So, to Luke's point, most likely a hybrid model is, engaging consultant services to come in and help us, come up with these things with our feedback. So, I doubt we'll be doing a lot of the heavy work ourselves, but that's TBD right now. So we're still coming up with that. That's all I have for HMI.
Good. All right. Move on to the last one, which is hardware. It's which also ties in with Paul's previous with his presentation before me about communication infrastructure. So we're focusing on PLC and networking equipment with interconnection design and replacement standards. With that, so we want to standardize on a hardware and software system. Our standard that we come up with is that we're going to use Siemens PLCs. They're integrated in the system already, the plant already. We talked about replacing them. Siemens is a global industry leader, but there's lots of other ones. But we decided to stay with the standardized on Siemens at this time.
I'm sorry, I had a follow-up question on that last screen. So that's your what's going on and all the information being gathered. That's being displayed. Is there a central place where all that information is displayed, or is it displayed at each individual kind of process unit? They can kind of see these tank levels near the tanks, or is it basically at the the operations office where that display is? And is that also something that you're available to see remotely port in and be able to do that, or do you have firewalls to prevent anybody else getting in?
We do have firewalls that prevent intrusion. This is a standalone system. We've worked very hard, both Luke and Kevin have worked very hard to isolate that system and keep that separate from our standard networks and things. For security reasons, we're trying to follow CISA compliance or CISA guidelines, which is a federal agency that establishes those guidelines. So there's still some more work to do, but we're at the tail end of this. We've pretty well isolated that system. With regards to the HMI and the screens, those are available at different points throughout the plant. I mean, generally speaking, I would say we operate, there's one set of screens that's up for that particular process in a specific area, but I think they can pretty much see just about everything throughout the entire plant. So one person could go to almost any terminal and see what they need to if they can't get to that portion of the plant. So we're pretty flexible.
Yeah, it's designated control rooms in different areas where operators have control, and then we have a second level of people that can view only,
right,
and watch that and monitor that way. And it kind of brings to Paul's point about the infrastructure with the upgrade of bringing out different network topology and fiber in the plants where, like I said, we're talking future expansion or even just technology expansion where, yes, maybe an operator can be out there with an iPad. If we are able to expand the network and wireless networks to different facilities, different buildings around here, and they can be on the facility, on that site, on that front of that pump, and be able to view what's going on. So these are build out. These are future projects that we would like to that are down the road, but on our radar. Different things just based on operator needs and just on technology standards and goals. So. Okay. So this is coming back again for the network redundancy and installation. So this kind of shows it's still difficult. So in the middle there's two controls that look similar. They're the S715s, 1515s. Those are what we call. Pardon me. So you can. Yeah.
I can scroll.
There we go. Thank you. So those are. You said we're building redundancy in the network. I know people talked about the plant. Well, I'll stay in my lane here. But we talked about redundancy and about ensuring consistent operations. So we have in this diagram and in architecture we have two CPUs. One's a primary, one's a standby. they're both solving the logic, they're sharing information between each other. But if one of them happens to fail in the middle of the night, during the day, whichever, they have a heartbeat between each other, and the other one takes over for itself. So before, or even right now, you have a CPU fail, part of the plant goes black. Like you talked about, Blake, you have no information coming back, you have no way to control things. You've got to send an operator out to the site to manually operate or to visually check things, and you're calling your IT or your United department to get things back online again. So this is the type of network architecture design we're going to go through. Two CPUs, primary and standby. It also has at the top there, those are network switches, so they have redundant network links back to what we call our I/O servers, or HMI servers. This helps, like I said, this just helps with redundancy of the network. If you have power outage, you have a network failure, you have a appliance failure, any type of thing like that, this provides that failover for you. And obviously there is going to be some type of, we'll take everything out, but for the most part, this is the type of system we're going to be designing and moving forward with. Like I said, these are standard. The plant water treatment plant that I worked at had these. They had about 5 of them in the plant. They each ran different sections of the plant. One ran 4 filters, the other one ran 4 filters, one ran chemicals, one ran the high lift pump station. So this is something that is out there, and I know Ryan has seen a lot of plants also that have these types of systems in it too. So we want to move to this, and we think it's important for reliability and redundancy within the system for the importance of this plant. This is more redundancy, more reliability. It's the R's for today. So this is part of our HMI, or for our data center for the PLC information and for the HMIs. We have 2 different servers. This is the type of architecture we have right now. Also, but we'll also be moving to similar, but a newer technology for it. So each server pulls the PLCs and gets the data back. So they're both storing 2 sets of data. So if one were to fail, say hard drive failure, power supply failure, just complete something destroys the data, we always have a backup. Another system will automatically take back over for it. So this is an example of how that information flow works. PLC is the main supplier of information, and it pushes it both to both servers, platform A and platform B, and moves that up to the HMI, and HMI decides which server to take it from. And if one's not online, it moves to the other one and asks it for its information. You're okay. You're here, Michelle. Actually, I have more notes on different things because I focused on the PLC networks and HMI notes, but also I want to talk about consistent, like Ryan, one thing that Ryan really dear to his heart, which is panel construction and building panels and being consistent in your wire colors and your wire markers. That's one thing that's come out of this. This also is, black and white. If a technician goes to a panel and they see black and white wires, they know it's going to go 120 AC. It's AC power, 120. If you see a blue and a white wire, blue wire, white wire, that's 24 volt DC. If you see yellow wire, it's foreign voltage. It's coming from somewhere else, not from within the panel. So, be careful. And looking at wire markers. Okay, this wire marker tells me this is where this wire has come from. This is where it's going to. So we're standardizing on that, on wire markers, and then also on the wire colors. So if you open something up, you know what it is there with that. So right now we have some of the standards, but not fully, and this is going to help us move that way, especially with the new Hypo project and the new control panel that we're building, that his team's building.
Yeah, this will be very helpful from a technician standpoint when they go up to a panel. Currently, a piece of equipment may go down, technician walks up to the panel, and there's no documentation or reverse engineering, 20 years of different technicians doing different things. So once you're familiar with the standards, you should almost be able to walk up to any panel and the new standards and not even really need drawings for the most part. So definitely be huge for the E&I department.
Exactly. And lastly, replacement schedule. We're going to be on a consistent replacement schedule with our PLCs. A lot of PLCs we're running out here are end of life support. So we do have spare parts. We do the ability to replace them, but they are not readily available anymore. And so we're going to be going through those and looking at a replacement schedule. And then my next presentation is about a replacement schedule for our servers also. So we're going to be consistent in how we schedule these and how we forecast them in the future within budgeting. And that's all I have on this. Any additional questions? A lot of technology. Sorry.
I got a great one in this. The next little section here about acronyms and abbreviations. I love it.
Yeah, they have a whole list of them.
Does anybody know what proportional integral derivative or
control?
Yes. Structured query language.
Yeah.
I mean, why did they give me this? I went up here with DMZ.
It's a DMZ, but a DMZ is the same thing as in Korea, but it's just a network. It's just a network area instead of a physical area.
I thought it was a band.
Appreciate the overview.
I've got one question.
Go ahead. Yeah, Scott.
So it seems to me that there's going to have to be training for the staff on this.
Yes, there will be. I would say light training because we have some portions of this implemented already, but there will definitely be a consistent, effort to ensure that we continue to use it. Most of us have been here for. I mean, I've been here the least amount of time at 3 years.
Okay.
Everybody else in the E&I and in the IT department has been here longer, so they're familiar with what's kind of their work. Because we're just going to be consistently using it and have the authority to make these to tell. And we have the buy-in from our leadership team that we can tell consultants or contractors that this is how we're going to be using it, and just being professionals in the industry. I'm going to use this right when I go grab a spool of wire off of this shelf. I'm going to use, and I know what I'm using it for. It better be the right color. And so, the supervisors and myself will be checking those things and ensuring that everything is done how we need to.
That's great. Good to hear you guys have taken that step back and come up with a master plan. And I really appreciate you hearing the interface with the operators who have to use all your data and hopefully giving you guys better tools to operate the plant, working together as a team.
Continuously evolving, working together to make it better.
Yeah, not working in a silo and then
correct. Yeah,
making sure you functional output for the operation of the plant. So
exactly, they're the ones that have to make the decisions. They've got to have information. It's got to be good information and timely for them to make the right decisions.
Great.
It's important for us.
So, Luke, I'm curious because it sounds like our existing kind of system has been built over the years, but without a set of standards like this. So, I'm assuming it's going to take years for that existing system, as you're upgrading it, to get it standardized into this format.
Correct.
So you're going to be. It's not like because we have this now. It's clear for every time that a different person is walking up to one of these electronic gizmos that it's not all set up like this. Right?
No,
it's just getting started.
Yeah, it's just getting started. So the existing system, they kind of, like I said, we've got different models of PLCs in different areas. And so we're going to, and they are on the. We're going to develop a replacement project or a replacement schedule for them, and then begin replacing them.
And will you do things like as you're like wire colors? You were talking about that. So you've got what you've got now.
True.
So is like part of it like an electrician would do, where it's like, oh, that's actually a white wire, but in our new protocol it should be a blue wire. So you're like put a blue piece of tape on it. Are you doing that kind of stuff?
I would defer to Ryan. Is more in the panels.
Probably not with a lot of existing equipment. A lot of it's almost too far away from this.
Yeah.
But it would be moving forward. Any new panels, anything we do, any new projects, we'll use the standard. And over time, it'll slowly get rid of the older panels and
it'll be a multi-year process.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If not a decade or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And you guys call this the SCADA IT system, but really this is the OT, right? There's kind of IT, and this is the operational technology. This isn't the email system and Outlook and all that stuff. This is all OT side of things.
Yeah, I think we incorporated it due to the name of the group at the time. SCADA IT was the group that handled this, so I think that's kind of how that came about.
But there is a distinction between the OT, so this is a standalone system, not connected to the.
Yes, that is correct.
What you might
It
call
is-
the IT.
It is firewall.
Yeah.
Separated from system, but yeah, with credentials.
And you guys work on both the OT and the IT sides, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Okay. Impressive. Yeah, a lot going on here.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And more to come.
Yeah. Super. Thank you, Luke. Any other questions for Luke on the master plan? That was phase 1, so I assume we'll see a future phase on that. That takes us now. We're kind of inching our way to the center of the.
I know. Sorry.
Section 5, and now we're going to end with item 3 on the consideration of approval of awarding the procurement of some servers. Is that
All
your
right.
Luke?
That's me. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yes. I also wanted to talk real quick too, or as last mentioned, was about, we talked about this new study, nutrient removal study, and whether it's going to be a new plant or different things. But having this standard is, if we do build a new plant, we can build it to this standard. We have the standard that we want it to be built by for our construction and for our technologies, which is a good thing. We'll have this. All right, moving on. So this is another part of phase 1. I'll just kind of go through the memo a little bit. So we developed a SCID IT master plan with Jacobs Engineering CH2M Hill for the condition of our technology systems and components, and compare against industry standards outside of your. Like I said, we had a list of PLCs that were and servers that were either out of end of life or nearing end of life, things that needed to be upgraded. So one of those plans was to replace servers. One of the phases was to replace the servers because current server hardware is end of life and just it needs urgent replacement. We have some old stuff that is working, but it needs to be replaced at this time. So this upgrade we need to do this hardware upgrade before we can do the software upgrade because that is part of the plan. Also, is to do the HMI software upgrade also. So in January this year, even before that, we were working with a company called Redesign through Dell for replacement hardware installation services for the upgrading our servers. Redesign is a titanium partner with Dell and part of the Omnia purchasing partner, which is the partners group in the cooperative purchasing agreements. We were going to move to what's called a hyper-converged system. We throw it out technology terms, but hyper-converged brings all your hardware and storage into one unit. But then it gets separated logically within that one unit, so you can run multiple instances of what we call an HMI server, and you can have multiple instances with failover. So if one part of the hardware fails, it's automatically switches to another one. It's a redundant hot standby process. So you can consistently, you have backup and redundancy with your hardware and software. Kevin and myself and Paul researched the different technology designs, compared the upfront costs and recurring costs of the approach, and we liked what Redesign with Dell put forward, and they brought in a quote of $104,908.73, which we thought which is within the budget of $167,000, and so we wanted to recommend approving the contract with Redesign for server replacement.
Any questions?
I have one. About the 36-month pro support.
Mm-hmm.
What's the 4-hour mean?
4-hour response time.
Response
So once we undertake it, then they have 4 hours to respond.
Okay.
And again, are these servers for the kind of the OT side
Yes,
of things?
correct. Yeah, these
okay.
are for, unclear. Yes, these are for the OT. These are for our HMI servers, IO servers, strictly for anything that's operating the plant and monitoring the plant. Correct.
Great. Dan?
I move approval.
I'll second.
Motion and a second by Dave Smelser. Any comments, Dale?
No, it's all Greek to me.
Great. At this point, we'll do roll call on the authorizing management to purchase these servers for $104,000.
104,908.73.
Correct.
Director Wilson.
Yes.
Director Cox.
Yes.
Director Wilkins.
Yes.
Director Smelser.
Yes.
And Director Chesson.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Thank you, Luke. Appreciate the presentation.
Appreciate it.
All right, that takes us to the end, I believe, of item 5, the regular agenda, and move on to our team reports. Start with you, Mike.
Sure, thank you. Board of Directors, good morning. So for the Operations Department report, all plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month, and the plant performed well. The chemical and recarb clarifier monitors were repaired and put back in service. We submitted the request for the WDR update, and we have received the notice of receipt from Mohonton Water Board, and we did provide them with some data that they asked for, and then we also provided support for the installation of the new final effluent flow meter. That's kind of it for the Operations Department. Next slide, please. These were our monthly average maximum and 7-day averages for flows, and you can see we met all our WDR requirements that we report. And next slide, please. And just a little comparison of the last 3 years of our influent flow. The green one being the newest. You can see we're a little bit below the last couple of years. 2023 was a little more. Other than that, do we have any questions for the Operations Department?
Questions for Mike? Good job, Mike. Thank you. Move on to maintenance. Paul.
All right. Well, good morning again. So we provided project support for the sodium hypochlorite project, just still ongoing. Did a significant amount of work on the electrical on that, also the mechanical. You'll see in some of the pictures that we had to rip out some of the old piping to make room for the new skid. Also, skate IT master plan, as you're well aware of the past few agenda items. Warehouse inventory project is ongoing, along with Lucity work order and PM implementation. We were able to complete the final effluent flow meter installation. Again, you'll see some more pictures on that upcoming. That was quite a big project, and it actually provided quite a bit of benefit for us. So I think we're all coordinating with operations, and we're all quite pleased with the outcome of that one. We completed the installation of a dewatering load-out heater, and we converted another blower over from a Roots back over to a Tuthill. We removed a Moino filter press feed pump in preparation for the CPEX pump installation, which was approved at a prior board meeting. So those projects are ongoing. We have quite a few of those to install. And then still having some ongoing rodent damage, and did some work for primaries number 3 and 4 flow meters, cleaned some of those. And some additional work to the TTSA website. If you've had a chance to take a look, there's some project updates and things that we've been doing on that. That is also ongoing. We do have an update coming for that soon, but once we have more information on that, we'll let the board know about that as well. And with regards to work orders, we're on a downward trend a little bit. I think over the holidays we started, we didn't write up so many work orders, so slightly trending downward. Before we get to pictures, Dan, I did want to address one of your questions with regards to the hybrid loader. We did do some research on that, reached out to Empire Cat, and we confirmed that the 938 model that we are intending to use or that we did purchase is not available in a hybrid. The hybrids only start at the 966 model, which is much larger than what we would need. Also significantly more expensive too. So I did want to at least respond to your request for information on that. And on the 2 pictures. And that's, so we've got our electricians and our mechanics working together on that installation for the flow meter. It's a mag meter that we put on that final flow line. Some more pictures of the same process there. And that would be at the filter press feed pump. That's actually a picture of one of the old Moino pumps that will be replaced with a CPEX pump. And to the left is some work that we did on the electrical in preparation for the sodium hypochlorite, putting in a new load center, distribution panel, and transformer. On the right, That's just one of the pictures of the the strategic plan workshop bridges. One of the workshop bridges. I would say the winning, but
You did say the winning,
I
so it
did.
must have been yours.
And just a quick note with regards to supervision, providing more updates to the board. Our intent within the department is to bring supervision forward a bit more often, to interact with the board as they're requesting items for approval. So we'll probably see them more frequently.
Thank you, Paul. Any follow-up questions?
No.
Maintenance department? Great, thanks. Jason?
All right, good morning, Ian Board. So we've got. Let me get this organized differently. So we completed the emergency monitor repair. As you're aware, we had a couple of leaks on the phosphorus removal system, and they've been repaired. That's all closed out. So we are still finishing out the pad on the hypochlorite foundation. It's been poured. All the forms have been removed. We have a little bit of minor patchwork, but the hope is that that will be released this week. We're going to be doing a test break on the concrete. If we're at the correct PSI, we're releasing it to these guys to start jamming on installing stuff. We got the tanks are likely to come in somewhere at the end of March. And then I think from that point, we're going to jam through a lot of that stuff. So engineering's offering some support on providing drawings and as-builts and working with maintenance and NI to kind of put together a formal plan. So been a good cooperative thing there. Digestion improvement project, we have an active RFP out for that right now. We've just received proposals. We're going to be evaluating those. There's some chance we may have a recommendation at the next board meeting. The TRI Alpine Meadows to Olympic Valley rehab project, so we're going to be relining likely a stretch of the TRI there between manholes 33 and 35. And we have proposals in hand. We are finishing evaluating them. We will have a recommendation for the next board meeting to award design on that.
How many proposals did you guys get?
We got 3. We got Kinghorn, we got Brown and Caldwell, and we got Corolla. So this is
That's for the design work?
For design.
Okay.
How long of a distance is that?
I think it was 3,000 linear feet, somewhere in that range. We are continuing design on the front parking and landscaping project. Yeah. There's some photos. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. We learned a lot. Obviously, you know, the intent is typically to steer away from pouring concrete in the winter. We learned a lot. This was a good project. It worked out very well. We did have a very favorable winter, so I'm not going to take too much credit for that. But it worked out very well. All strength on all the concrete has been coming out, and it exceeds what we're looking for. So we're really happy with the foundation. We're really happy with the contractor. Everything's worked out pretty well, and they've worked with the weather constraints. So yeah, you can see there they've already broken all those forms off. The process of putting those forms on put some holes in the pad, so they got to go through and patch all those things. So it's been a cool project. Okay, and then on the lab, so there was some interest. Blake, I believe you had asked maybe for a demonstration, so we have been collecting that data. Rochelle, you want to give it a go, or you want me to come over?
Oh, yes, I have that. Let me get it for you.
It's important to note that this information is, they're very explicit on the website that this is research. So it's not functional. Don't go putting on masks because of data that we get from it, but it is very, very useful information for them. Our primary data that we have available to us is going to be in the form of COVID data. But they are also applying our effluent to research on influenza A and B, RSV, Mpox, a couple other communicable viruses. So if you go down, Rochelle, keep going. There's a map. You'll see. Up. A little more up. A little more up. Okay, so over there it says select sewer shed. So if you go find Nevada County on that list to the left of the map, to the left of the map.
Can you see where it says Nevada County?
No, I can't see.
I can go over there. It's not a problem.
Is it under the number one filter?
Yeah, it's the filters. Number one, if you scroll on that, it'll go down and you'll find Nevada County. Scroll with your, yeah, there you go.
Okay.
And then find Nevada County.
Keep going.
Almost there.
Nevada County.
Nevada.
There.
And you see how it says parenthetically Tahoe Truckee? Grass Valley will be going online. I'm not 100% sure yet if we're going to be lumped in with Grass Valley. That's it. Or if there's going to be a separate Nevada. Now, if you select all for the data source. Okay, now go down a little bit and you can see the data trend on the screen. So there's our data.
Okay.
The unit of measurement that this in is pretty complicated. I had to do some research just to figure out what the unit is, but it's basically a measure of how much COVID, how much SARS-CoV-2 there is per unit of human waste. So you'll see, I think the most information you'll glean from this, if we glean any, is going to be trends. It's either going up, it's either going down, or it's staying flat, because the numbers are kind of arbitrary. And if you're interested, you can always go select multiple counties and look at their data and see what's trended for them. This will become more interesting as we develop more data, but we've been doing this for about 12 weeks now. So this is, or 6 weeks. So this represents that data.
And Jason, you had indicated that they actually were testing for a number of different things. Is there the ability to? This looks like this is for the SARS.
This is SARS-CoV-2.
So is the other data available?
So
or?
Internally, we get data in the form of PDF summaries.
Okay.
From the entire state, where they break it down by region. It's actually very extensive, but there's also a very explicit disclaimer on that. It's not public information. It's not for public's release.
Okay. So the only stuff that they we make available is the COVID data.
Correct.
And is there we've only been doing it for a while. This is, it doesn't show a whole lot. Is there other spots that, might indicate the trends that you were talking about? If you click, I don't know whether San Francisco's been doing this from the beginning. If you click on that, what that might look like, and does it bounce around a fair amount?
Yeah, it does. You'll see peaks. Whether or not, this is, I think, where the caution comes in and why they're very reluctant to use it as a public health tool is, do those correlations match up? And if they do, to what level of statistical significance? And so that's kind of on their end. I think for this, the intent would be trending. Is it up? Is it down?
Right. I don't know who would have lots of data that.
Most of them have been doing it since 22 or 21. You can select any maybe UC Davis.
Yeah, that looks like a good one. Yeah, click on the YOLO UC Davis.
So this data goes to the state, and then does the state disseminate that to the hospital district?
Go left. It's like the one in the middle.
There's a whole work group there.
Yep.
Of people that are on the
now scroll down.
It's going to be public utilities. It's going to be healthcare providers. It's going to be county departments of public health. So there you can see that it spikes periodically.
Yeah.
And that goes all the way back to 2021. It looks like.
Yeah. So it is an interesting tool.
Yeah.
That's good. And again, it's not a undue burden on your staff to participate in this.
No,
that's great.
We hold sample from 3 samples during the week, and we ship it all out on Thursday. And they pay for everything. They provide the boxes, so it's pretty cool. So we are still continuing to recruit for lab director. Hopefully we will start that process in earnest here in the next several weeks and get someone selected in that spot. We didn't have any corrective actions this month. Public outreach is on this report only because I'm heading it up right now. We haven't found a long-term home for it, but we wanted to give you guys an update on what's going on with that. So we had a plant tour. Operations did an amazing job bringing the fifth graders around. It was great. It was a great interaction with TSD staff. had an opportunity for both agencies to do presentations, and kids were engaged. It was a really good opportunity to get some outreach. So I know we've mentioned it prior, but we have formed a group of employees here that we're working towards having kind of an on-call public outreach service where we want to participate in 5 or 6 different events during the year. A lot of the stuff TSD already goes to, we want to start attending. DDPUD's there, North Tahoe is usually there. We want to do all those things, get a tent and everything. So we're working on putting all that together. Yeah, we've got several events already planned, and we've already got booths set up. So it should be a lot of fun.
You guys are participating, I think you got something lined up at the Alder Creek Middle School?
Yes, that's in March. So that will be another collaboration between us, TDPUD, and TSD.
Hitting all this 186th grade students.
Yeah, over
that's
2
great.
days.
Yeah. That's
It's going to be a packed day.
Well, and I think we just landed a booth in August at the concerts that are going to take place at the soccer park too.
So a lot of really engaged individuals volunteered and putting together a little bit of handouts and getting some shirts made, and we'll look super official. Get a tent with a logo on and everything, and a lot of people really interested and excited about participating. So.
Awesome. Anything for Jason?
No, I just thanks for putting the effort in on some of the public outreach. I think that's good. I mean, this plant has a great story to tell. I mean, I think in terms of the public agencies in the region, and there's a lot more talk these days about environmental protection. It's always been a big topic, but it seems even more so now. And I got to believe that what this agency does is probably 20 times the value from an environmental protection standpoint of everything else that's going on in the entire region. So it's not being said to diminish what others are doing, but I think there's a soundbite there in terms of our public communication that people don't really think about that would be good to maybe kind of develop that message, in a simple way to help people maybe gain a better appreciation for all the work that you guys do out here. Men and women, sorry. These guys is a
general term.
General term, yeah.
All right.
I agree, Dan. Great. We'll move on to the admin department report.
Yeah, so I'll take the finance and admin report. So completed our routine, monthly AP and AR items. We had a finance committee meeting, working to prepare the final audit. We have Liz on board now, so we've been putting her to work. She's starting work on the cash flow analysis for us. We welcomed Kevin as our new purchasing agent, so he's been getting up to speed. And we have some additional duties for him to take on in the future with bids and stuff like that. As far as billing customer service, I'll set the slide speak. No residential connection fees, a couple commercials. One item kind of back on the finance, we did have a meeting with S&P as a routine review of our rating. So we worked with Stephen Portler on that. We got word back just the other day that we have maintained our AA rating, so everything's good there. And then again, as far as the administrative side, we continue to recruit for replacement for the finance and admin individual. So that's been posted. Waiting for some applicants to come in. I did get the firm that's doing our audit reached out, offered their assistance when it comes time to interview, so I'll take them up on their assistance as far as the interview panel, as well as leveraging Liz for the interview panel as well. Any questions on the finance and admin side?
I just had one clarifying question. You guys give us a really nice table showing the number of connections for the month to date and the year to date. and then there's a bar chart below it with the residential EDU summary. And I noticed, this month, like you said, no new connections. But then in the bar chart, it looks like there's on the order of 20 connections, and just how those two different, and those are slides 205 and 206. Rochelle, I don't know if that would help. So you guys know what I'm talking about?
I can pull it up.
Just how that, why one says nothing new and the other one shows, 20 new. Is there, what the timing situation there is one, yeah.
I'll have to check with Celeste
Okay.
on that one and get back to you. Not sure on the timing.
Okay. One's when the connection fees are paid, and other ones when something else happens, building finals, and you're now charging user fees or something like that. It'd be good to understand that connection. That was it for me. Thanks.
And then also we've been working with the Finance Committee on some various reports, making more graphic. So working on charts. We've got some samples by, got some feedback, so we're working on refining those. More to come on those. So on them, any questions? Any more questions?
Thank you, Michelle, for all the hard work you've been putting in. We do appreciate it.
GM report.
Great.
Been working with a consultant to line up a start date for our manager supervisor training, and we are going to open that up as seats are available to interested staff for succession planning and starting to prepare people for promotions. So hopefully we can start. I was hoping to start at the beginning of the year. Just with timing, it looks like probably next month or two we'll be able to start kicking that off. Again, the recruitment continues for the finance and admin manager. Sorry, got stuff popping up on my screen here. Again, Liz is on board. You got the opportunity to meet Liz today. She's been extremely helpful, very knowledgeable. So it's been nice working with her. We're also working. One of the items that was identified in the master plan was a pilot to recycle flow, which would give us the ability to lower methanol usage, as well as that was a method to keep from having to expand BNR. So we've been discussing doing that pilot project in-house and getting that moving. So more to come on that over the next few months as we go if I kick that off. We did meet with Carollo so we could get some flow numbers and what we should be expecting for reduction. So as we get that information back, we're going to start doing that.
So, Richard, what is that? Is that taking like partially treated water and cycling it back through the plant?
It is, yeah. So I could let Michael kind of talk about where it comes from. But it is about taking partially nitrated nutrient removal and running it back through to
so after we nitrify the ammonia, bringing a portion of that nitrified water back before it goes into denitrification or before the methanol is added as a carbon source for denitrification, bringing that flow back to the headworks and actually having that nitrification process happen with the some of the bugs that are already in the primary influent and in the primaries. And we're looking at maybe, we have a lot of bench testing to do to see if it's something that's viable for us, but maybe potentially up to 25% reduction of nutrient going into denite, or the nitrified water going into denite, and reducing that. It equates to roughly $100,000 a year methanol that we would not have to use. Mm-hmm. So you'd be using the naturally occurring COD or the strength of the wastewater that's already there in the primaries to help that nitrification cycle finish up. Basically, like we do in the denitrification, take the nitrate and nitrify it further, and it turns into nitrogen gas. We would expect that process to happen naturally in the primary, hopefully up to maybe 25% of that loading.
So it's taking partially treated water, cycling it through the plant a second time, and
getting nitrogen reduction that way.
Yeah.
Which then, okay.
And our bottleneck is at our denitrification. If we were ever to come to a place where our loadings were exceeding what the system can handle, that's where the bottleneck is anyway. We've got plenty of nitrification cells. We still have 3 cells that are mothballed we don't even use. So that could really put us into the future, push us off 10 years, 15 years before we had to do an expansion. And in the process of, we're going to be looking at other process and other alternatives, which may, reduce that in the future as well. But this would get us to get us further down the road, not have that be a pinch point for us anymore. So,
it kind of, sorry, I didn't mean to step on you. It kind of ties into that, looking at other technologies. This is the proof of concept that this would actually work, because it is an identified path forward in the master plan. If we do the bench testing and it doesn't pan out, or we don't do the pilot, or if we do the pilot and it doesn't pan out, then at least we know that's not a viable path forward within the master plans. So working on that. We'll have photos as we get going on that project and keep you updated. Again, I kind of mentioned the cash flow analysis and the S&P reviews. Obviously, last item there's master plan discussions. As you can see, we've been having tons of those internally. We appreciate the opportunity to bring that to the board and get direction and feedback on that. Look forward to bringing it back. Continue work on the land exchange. We actually have a meeting with the airport today, working those paths forwards to get that all finalized. Attended the Truckee River Revitalization Steering Committee meeting this month. As mentioned, we had a community involvement team that's been active. HR has been doing interviews with different departments for operations and E&I. We did hold our second strategic planning session where we focused in on some goals for the year and some projects to work on, both as groups as well as departments. So we'll be moving those forward. Did a celebration for January birthdays. We've been getting back on doing that once a month with staff. And then we had an all-staff meeting. We reinstituted once a month safety meeting and combined it with an all-staff meeting. So we were able to give an update on the class and comp study, which that update is they're still working on the comparables to bring to the board for approval. We were hoping to bring that this month, but we don't have a finalized list yet. So goal is next month for that, so we can stay on track with the timing. As part of the first strategic plan, we created agency mission, vision, guiding principles. Reviewed those with staff after I've kind of tweaked them, and everyone agrees that they can live with them. So now I will send them out to the board for your guys' review and input, and then we'll finalize those and use those to move the agency forward in the years to come.
Richard, there's a reference on there to the land exchange. Being getting the details of that finalized. How close is that?
The individual that's been working on the project's been out, so we're reshuffling. I think we'll have a better idea after we meet with Wally today on some of the survey stuff. Yeah, we have met with the school district on the lease issues between the well site, so we have to modify the leases. So I've already reached out to Andrew. They're reviewing that on their end to modify the 2 leases. And then we need the final survey, and we're going to talk to Wally about that one plot that is in Nevada County and not within the town, how we deal with that one. So I hate to throw a date on there because I don't know what all that's going to entail. But after we meet with Wally, I might have a better idea of how long that'll take. So, a few photos. Happy birthday celebration for all of the January birthdays. And then some photos from the strategic planning. One of the one of the things we did as part of the plan was a team building where the teams were built up and had to build a bridge, and it was rated based on its ability to withstand weight as well as its architectural beauty. So we had a winning team. Paul's trying to claim win, but it was another team that won. And then we broke out into some work groups to establish some goals for the upcoming years. One being how we do our review processes and how that plays in for staff. The future as far as what technologies we do. There's a group working on that. One group wants to pursue an on-site gym for staff, so we're pursuing that one. I'm missing one, but it'll come to me later, I'm sure. I think one was actually a morale building one, so a team to take on like the ACES events we do and other morale boosters. I think everyone enjoyed part of the process, and I think it was well worth the day spent together as a leadership group, establishing those goals for the future.
Remind me, was that effort facilitated in-house, or did you have someone to help with that?
I did bring in a facilitator to help with it, yeah. And she's done several for Long Beach transportation and others, and she was a really good facilitator. If anyone's ever looking for one, I'd highly recommend her.
Good fit?
Yeah, very good. I thought so. I mean, all these guys were a part of it, so.
Very energetic.
Yeah. And I appreciate the staff's willingness to let us bring some of the supervisory staff in to start presenting some of the things that they're bringing. Again, it's succession planning is big on all of our minds as we're all getting older and transitioning out. It's time to build the up-and-comers. So appreciate the board's willingness to let them present and have their stumbles and refine their presentation skills like all of us needed.
Nice. Thanks. Any questions from the board on Richard's report?
No.
Thank you, Richard.
Sorry, I have one more item. Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Mentioned tours. So April 25th, Greg has lined up a tour of Sac Regional. So we're going to send a group down. He reserves 12 spots. It'll be an all-day event, but I do want to open it up to the board. I know we do have Brown Act issues if we have more than two. So if there's any interested parties, please let me know. And we'll reserve a seat for you and keep you posted on April 25th.
It's pretty good. Sac Regional's like the largest inland water discharger, I think, in the state.
It's
something
big,
like that.
big.
It's definitely scales very large. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so talk to Richard if you're interested in attending the tour.
And we do intend to do additional tours, especially as we start identifying the feasible technologies that may work for our region. For staff to go get out and see those and ask questions to those that are actually operating them. It's great having a consultant that tells you that they built a great facility, but it's even better to talk to the operators and the maintenance staff that are running it to see if it is as great as they claim it was.
Good. All right. Almost noon. Any director comments? David?
No, I'm good.
Dan? Nope. Scott? Nope. Dale? Any comments from Florida?
Yeah, I got a couple of comments. That, this has been a real interesting meeting with the presentations about updating the possibility of updating our treatment process, our SCADA systems, our IT systems. You showed me a lot of need that we have at the agency, but there's one thing you didn't show me, and that is, where's the money?
Well, we're working on a cash flow analysis, so hopefully that'll provide us some of the answers to that question.
That's my only question, is where's the money?
Thanks,
and I
Dale.
know, Blake, you're sitting there chuckling to yourself, but you're the head of the finance committee, and you can show me next month, okay?
We got them working hard, Dale. and so we hope to, move that forward. Great. I'll just applaud staff, management, and supervisory team, and just even the line staff that showed up here that were interested in hearing the discussion on the nutrient alternatives. Nice to see everybody getting engaged, and so nice job. I think that's it for me. I think that might be it. So there's nothing else. Move to adjourn the meeting. So we can take some motion.
Move to adjourn.
So we are adjourned. Thank you, guys.